Okay, I'm going to call to order this regular council meeting 1559, Tuesday, April 26th. And in honor of the Liwat-Tool, the Village of Pemberton acknowledges that we are meeting within the unceded territory of the Liwat Nation. Okay.
That's good too. All right.
Slowly. Has anybody got an amendment to the agenda? Seeing none, a motion to approve, please. Councilor Zen, second by Councilor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. Rise with report from the camera. We have none. Adoption of minutes from regular council meeting 1558 from Tuesday, April 5th, moved by Councilor Noble, seconded by Councilor Antonelli. Any opposed? Yeah, motion carries. Any business arising? Seeing none. No business arising from the cow delegation. So we're going to go right to 9A. And this is major development permit application number 90, Tankwell Building 7454 Prospect Street. And wait for Mr. McCray to join us.
Scott McCray is not present.
Okay, just a sec.
I just messaged him.
I can't get on to this computer.
Should we move on to another item?
Well, why don't we read? Let's just take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah.
Sheena settle in and fix the computer. So we're going to recess the meeting for a few minutes here in case anybody's watching and just sort out a few tech issues.
Thank you.
Can't leave yet, Ryan. It's not over.
No cookies.
Okay, so we're going to reopen the meeting, and just for those members of the public in attendance, please note that this meeting is a live webinar and it's being recorded, and recording of the meeting will be available on the village's website following the meeting. So we're picking up at 9A. This is regarding a major development application for Tankwell Building. And Mr. McCray. Morning, Mr. McCray. Thank you for joining us. We're ready to hear from you on the Tankwell Building when you're good to go.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Apologies for the poor organization this morning. I tested positive for COVID last night, so I'm just scrambling to set up a work from home arrangement here.
There you go.
Is it possible to share a presentation?
Yes, you may. You may share your screen.
Okay.
For the share screen, the green box at the bottom of your screen.
Okay, I will do so here. Okay.
You okay if I sit like this?
Pardon?
You okay if I
Yeah.
sit like this?
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will be presenting the development permit application for DP 90, known as the 10 Keel Building, located at 7454 Prospect Street. So the purpose of this development permit, or of this presentation, I should say, is for council's consideration of DP 90, which is a DP area number 4 for the form and character downtown revitalization for the 10 Keel Building. Importantly, in this development permit is a proposed variance to permit 0 off-street commercial loading spaces. So the zoning bylaw would require 1 off-street commercial loading space. But staff believe that a variance in this case is allowable due to the small size of the commercial spaces in this building. So this report also provides council with an analysis of the proposed development permit and includes a recommendation from staff that council approves this issuance along with the variance. So here's a quick rundown on the site and the surrounding. That dotted line represents a 400-meter radius from the site. So currently the site is vacant. Adjacent uses are commercial and residential. This is the existing condition of the site as of last summer. Here's some details on the building itself. So it'll be a 3-story building with 2 commercial units. Total floor area of actually that's incorrect. The total floor area is 76 meters squared. Each unit will be approximately 400 square feet, give or take. And then 10 residential units, a mix of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. So the architectural style of the building makes use of a lot of dark tones. The color palette tries to tie into a natural color palette of dark colors that would be found in nature. There's some notes there about a dark bronze exterior cladding and some stained wood accents, for example, at the entrance. Here are some additional views of the building, just to give you a sense of what the site will look like. Again, it's a lot of neutral tones and yeah. And some further views here. A quick look at the landscape drawings. Pretty straightforward landscaping arrangement here with some trees proposed in the front as well as some planters. And last set of views from the architectural drawings that show the building in various different views. Here's a bit of an analysis of the zoning comparison. You can see that we're well within all requirements here. There is the required parking spaces would be 18. The proposed site is going to provide 15 plus 3 cash in lieu, which is in compliance with our zoning bylaw. So here's the draft resolution. This is another one that is going to be required to be passed in 2 separate resolutions. So if council is open to considering the variance as described, I'll go into a little bit more detail on that next. But first we can consider the variance, and then we can discuss approving the development permit with that variance in place. Or option 2 would be to refer the development permit back to staff. The variance in question is the 0 off-street commercial loading bays. So as mentioned earlier, the 2 commercial sites are quite small. The 2 commercial units, I should say, are quite small, about 400 square feet each. So we don't expect a lot of deliveries to these units that would require a constant commercial loading. So for that reason, it seems that approving this development permit with the variance for 0 off-street commercial loading spaces would be acceptable. And so with that, that concludes my presentation on this development permit, but I'm happy to take any questions, anything that I may have briefed over.
Thank you, Mr. McRae. So with that loading spot variance request for the commercial spaces downstairs, it would be assumed that any truck unloading would happen on Prospect in the front of the building. Is that the idea?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councilor Antonelli and Councilor Craddock.
I'm wondering how you see the commercial loading working then, because they will be getting some deliveries and then there will be that move-in period. And also, how does the parking work with only 15 of 18 spots provided?
Sure, perhaps the applicant will also be able to weigh in on these questions. I can give you my understanding of the commercial loading. I expect that the parking in the on-street parking directly in front of the building will be occupied from time to time, but will be available at other times. And so it is possible that there will be no issue with a truck, a small commercial truck being able to park right in front of the building most of the time. And then as to speak to the parking variance, so the zoning bylaw would require 18 stalls. The applicant has proposed 15 stalls plus 3 stalls cash in lieu. And so the 15 stalls should account for the bulk of parking needs for the building. And the other 3, as per the parking in lieu clause in our zoning bylaw, the other 3 spaces will be covered by nearby village-owned parking facilities. And I'm thinking of the parking lot next to the barn as a likely location for any excess parking to be handled.
Just to follow up on that, so the apartments will have 1 parking stall each, and then the rest will be commercial, or how is that allocated?
Again, it may be best if the applicant has a chance to answer these questions, although I believe that the parking will be in the building will be solely allocated for residents, and then the commercial parking is proposed as parking in lieu.
Yep. That's correct.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Scott. Not Mr. Scott, I'm sorry. Just one question. On the pictures we have here, access to the parking for the residents, is that through the back area, or how? I couldn't see on the diagrams here how they access the parking for the building.
Are you referring to the parking in the rear of the building off the alley?
That's correct. Is it off the alley where it's going to come in?
Yes, that's correct.
I thought we decommissioned that a number of years ago, but good. No, that's great. I just wanted to understand that. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. The alley to the south of this is in use, and then there's currently a block, some sort of barrier there at the end, so essentially the alley will be extended for the back area of this development, so that exactly it can be accessed for parking purposes.
And that would be at the cost of the developer, would it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Just curious if this loading space variance that we're looking at has been approved for, or if we've allowed variances like this in the past for other businesses?
That's a good question. I'll have to double check on that.
I'd just be concerned that we're
Not in the near past. We certainly haven't provided any variances for loading.
My concern is being just unfair. If there's other businesses that have started up recently where they've gone to the trouble of making a loading space, then if we give this developer a variance, then I don't feel that's fair. If they want to assign one of their parking spots to be a loading space, I feel that would be fair. Whereas, that's the same other business in town have done.
Yeah, I don't know that the back alley has the ability to get trucks. I don't think it's a swap for a residential spot for a loading spot because of the design. I got you. I'm not sure of other examples. I mean, the idea of the variance is that it's a one-off. You look at it every time. It does, one could say that it sets a precedent for others to come forward, but it's not a precedent that certainly, we're not bound to any precedent because it's done as a variance for, if we think it's applicable, right? Go ahead. Did you have-
Oh, it just, in terms of loading, it is in a sort of, I don't know what kind of use or operations they're planning to be in. But if you look at what the other types of businesses that are in that small little section, it's mostly sort of office space and like a clinic and hair,
Yeah,
that kind of
yep.
thing. So there isn't a lot of deliveries that take place in that area. So that may be where the applicant is coming from, that it would be more of a not a supermarket or anything like that that requires a lot of deliveries. So it probably can be accommodated.
Can you remind me the square footage of the commercial space, Mr. McCray?
Yes, the total floor area of the commercial space was about 76 meters squared, which is about 800 square feet. So each unit is approximately 400 square feet.
Oh, 20 by minutes. So to the point of what is potentially being delivered there. Go ahead, Councilor Noble.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we were to approve the loading space variance, whether we could do so with a stipulation that they not accept deliveries during critical times, like when students are going to or from school.
Are we able to put that sort of restriction on?
I don't believe we can.
I off the top of my head, I don't know, but that's something we can look into.
Be a tough one to honestly to enforce, just because the delivery people are not on the business people's schedule. They come when they come, depending on traffic, in my experience. So it might be, I'm not saying it's a non-starter, but I'm just saying it might be a little bit difficult one to monitor and enforce. But I think whether we feel that the size and type of commercial space being offered is going to, cause a lot of loading and unloading is, I think, really the key item at hand on that. Would be my thought. Any other questions? So the 3 parking in lieu, that doesn't require just a variance. If we can go to the recommendations in the report. Just getting back there myself. In option 1, in the second that, it says the council authorizes development permit with variances, plural. So I just want
Yes. That's a typo. Apologies, that's a typo. Approval with variance is how it should read.
just the one that council's looking at right now, right?
That's correct.
And ADRC comments are in this report. I've always got an eye about form and character, and you address it in the report, the neutral colors, the kickouts, and added lines to the building. I just want to make sure that we're all happy with that, and that the landscaping meets all of our requirements at the very least, so that it fits into the neighborhood well, I guess is what I'm getting at. I guess it's not really a question. It's all been addressed in the report, but I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable with that. Go ahead, Councilor Antonelli.
We're on to comments now.
Yeah.
I think that the facade is a little somber. I don't think that it really reflects the character of Pemberton. I appreciate that a lot of the architecture these days is that dark gray and black, but I think over time that'll pass. And then if we have too much of it in the village, we'll find, we'll reflect back and wonder, why is so much of the village dark gray? So I would like to see some attempt there to reflect the character of Pemberton a little bit more. I appreciate most of the elements, but I think just another look at that would be really helpful. As far as the loading and the parking, I think, we're heading towards less parking for apartments. So, I can appreciate that. And I think these 400 square foot units won't need a lot of delivery. So I can support that. But I think looking forward in our official community plan, we really do need to have a deeper assessment of our parking needs and the amount of commercial that's going to develop over time, and if the two match. And I'm a little concerned that if we continue doing these variances, eventually they won't match and our downtown will be too congested. So, yeah, I would support this with another look at the facade to put some permanent character in there.
Any other comments? Yeah, I support a lot of what Councilor Antonelli just said. I think it's, I'm okay with, I'm able to support the variance on the loading spot. I think those commercial spots will not create a lot of commercial traffic in terms of trucks. And I do want to make sure, that's what I was stumbling on earlier. I do want to make sure that it fits in with the character of the neighborhood and the downtown. So, and I don't know, I mean, I don't know how to propose that. Maybe with council's will, we can bring the applicant on if they want to answer any questions or thoughts on this. If council would like to do that. I don't know if are they on? Yeah. Maybe let's do that for a couple of moments here. So I'll get a resolution to allow the applicants to speak. Councilor Craddock, second by Councilor Antonelli. Any opposed? Motion carries. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. You've obviously been watching. We just, so you've heard everything that's been said, I hope. There's just been a couple of questions, mild concern around the commercial parking spot, our loading area being given a variance in terms of what that might cost for traffic, and some discussion around the form and character and whether it fits the neighborhood in the long term and the landscaping and all that. So I wonder if you'd like to speak to some of those items. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Hi.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having us and presenting our project. We can surely answer those questions. My name is Andréane, by the way, and I'm with Tom Fitzgerald. So we're the owner developers behind the project. We've been working with architect Dennis McGuire. For the parking regulations, our calculations are that, yes, all condos have parking. For our 2-bedroom units, we needed at least 5.25. We're offering that for the 1-bedroom units, and then we need 7. So that's 12.25. This is definitely covered. And then adds the visitor and the commercial parkings. Commercial require 3 and visitor require 2.5. So we can choose depending, can we conclude that the visitor parkings they will be parking at the front anyway? I don't know who thinks when they're visiting a friend that they're actually go through the alleyway and use the condo interior parking. I feel that perhaps the cashier go to the visitor parking, which were equivalent to 2.5. And if we're not satisfied with that, we can say that it's the commercial or a mix. Maybe we give, 1 visitor cashier and 2 commercial cashiers or something like that. So we feel that we can, that would be satisfactory, but definitely all owners of the building are, they have the required parking. So that's definitely what we have to say about the parking calculations. We hope that will pass with you, considering that we are downtown, that we have the barn parking close by, and different street parking options. I can go on and answer more questions about the
let's just see if there's any follow-up questions about parking, or everybody good with that? Okay, no, carry on.
Okay, and as for the comments about the Pemberton character and the dark gray and all that, I want to rectify that the main siding, the dark color that we can see at the front is actually, it's called a dark bronze. So it's got that nice sheer of like espresso or bronze reflection in it. It's a beautiful metal siding. It'll be that corrugated, those smaller lines. So, and the black, the stark black will actually be more of accents. And then the wood is actually quite soft. So it comes in contrast. So I feel that for the color palette, yes, we want it to be neutral. We don't want it to stand out like something that's really, I don't know, that's too modern or, and also remember that this is a render. You know, we work with computer softwares, and unfortunately, you know, sometimes they're photorealistic and sometimes you just, you know, it comes out a bit like blah. Also, we were wondering if we should mention it, but I feel we should. We hadn't seen the presentation prior, and we noticed, Scott, that the pictures in the rendering, they've evolved since then. We have more landscaping, and those are architectural images. There's actually, you know, Japanese maple in the front and things, which are not shown on our render, but it will be more lively. There's grass, there's, and also when people occupy the building, yes, well, there we go. We see it on the landscaping plan. Yeah, oh, the landscaping plan is accurate. You see the ramp, there's a long ramp in front that does like a S shape. And then we've got the 2 Japanese maples and then big planters. And also I want to note that all units have really big balconies, like much bigger than you see around Pemberton for condo living. The smallest one is 7 feet by, 7 by 10. So that's the smallest one. Then we have 10 by 11 and the longest one is 7 by 20. We offer really big outdoor spaces for balconies. So you can imagine that people will make them their own and have their own plants, maybe their tomatoes and their small little gardens. So I think that will definitely add to the Pemberton character. I hope that answered your question. And finally, for, again, the materials and things, just the sides of the building, like it's, we could have made it like a line, like really boring, but we've articulated it and everyone has windows, views, even the middle part of the building that's looking at the expedition station, we've articulated so that windows are looking in the gap and then they're looking actually at mountains. So everyone has something to make their own and make, you know, condo living at its best and breathable and natural light and all that. So that's the thought behind the building. There's a lot of thought.
Any follow-up questions on that? Scott?
Yeah, just one thing in the presentation I didn't see. Are these all going to be resale units or are there going to be any rentals?
They will be ownership. They will be sold for ownership.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up questions for the applicants? Thoughts? Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Okay, so if there's no more comments or questions, I'm looking for a motion. There's a couple proposed on our agenda package. Would anybody like to make one? Councilor Craddock?
I'd go with option 1, but I like Councilor Antonelli's opinion about maybe going back and seeing if we can soften it up a bit with more of a Pemberton look.
Okay, so passing option 1 with both those that's with a request to the applicants to have another look at the.
Yeah, or maybe I should do that as a second motion.
Well, if you're passing this, you're passing the whole package, because the development permit, the renderings and everything are attached to the development permit. So you would be passing, if you want them to come back with the different
If we want changes, we should have them
changes,
come back.
then they should come back, yeah. With some revised.
So are we looking for changes to that form and character? And if so, let's speak to what we like and then have it come back, or we pass the package as presented.
With maybe with a recommendation to look at different colors. But passing the development permit as it is with a request to consider softening or different colors, that would be one option. in order to keep this moving forward. Otherwise, it would be best to have them come back with.
Craddock, your motion?
I'm a little confused now. I tried to put in there. Now I'm hearing the administrator saying we can, but we can't. So what do you want us to put in there if we want to
If
have?
you want them to reconsider the colors, then the best thing to do would be to send it back to staff and the applicant to reconsider. If you're okay with the colors may not change, but making the suggestion that they look at options, but that not being bound, then you could pass a resolution with a recommendation that they look at potential other color schemes.
That's what I'd like to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
But it's not, but just know that what you're approving is the renderings that are in the.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have a motion as option 1 here. Let's read it out so we're all clear. That development permit number 90 include the variance to decrease the required number of off-street loading spaces from 1 to 0. And the council authorizes development permit number 90 with the variance for issuance. With all the legal description, provision of cash, irrevocable letter of credit or other acceptable security in the amount of $7,962 to secure landscaping, and that the applicants consider some other color combinations to soften. I'm trying to work with your motion here, Councillor Craddock here.
Soften the look of the building from a color perspective. Does that work? Thank you.
I've got a mover. Is there a seconder? Councillor Zant, any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just say that if the dark corrugated metal is livelier than what's shown here, I'm happy with that, but I would encourage them to look at some additional Pemberton character, as we said.
Okay. Any other further comments? Have a question? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McRae.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay.
Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Don't take it around the neighborhood.
Yeah, do you want me to move them up?
Sure.
Okay, can I get a motion to move the fire quarterly report up in the agenda to 9B, I guess. Let's move it up.
I'll make the motion.
Second by Councilor Noble, any opposed, motion carries.
Page number I could work with that.
Um,
Just trying to find it here.
So the first report is the quarterly report. And that is page 65 of your agenda package.
Thank you.
Do you guys want to join us at the table or? Yeah.
Do one at a time.
We got an extra chair here too, if you want, or there, we can.
Let's put everybody at the table.
Morning.
Yeah, let's just grab that.
Don't turn my back to.
All right, I'm next.
Yes, he has his own stage. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. We're turning it over to you when you're ready to present the first quarter report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity. One thing I'd like to just add, right now our internet is down and our 911 system is down, so they're calling me directly on my phone if there's a call, so I may have to cut it short.
How's that been done?
I'm not sure. TELUS has done some updates, so
Updates. So
we sorted.
Good update.
So, yeah, so we sorted that out, so they may contact me, so I'm sorry, I have to keep my phone live. So this is the first quarter report of 2022. As you know, the areas that we cover for road rescue, for fire and all that, so I'm just going to get right into the stats. So for the first quarter of 2022, we attended 81 incidences. And the call volume is up from last year as COVID is starting to open up. People are starting to move around. And as you can see for the 5-year comparison chart, January was up to 30 incidences compared to January of last year of 25, and actually of 2020 is 29. So we've gone up in January. February was down slightly. March was up quite a bit, not to 2020 numbers, but to 2021 compared to 2022. There's a number of calls, so the total is 81. For the chart that I have indicates the greater number of days in a month. So March was 33 calls for the month. January was 1 call short for the month of 30 calls. Number of days, my chart shows the number of days. So we have a few days there that were missed, but overall it just shows sometimes we were doing 2-3 calls a day, which was gets a little bit crazy, but it's not too bad yet. Waiting for wildfire season to kick in. And then we have a breakdown of average number of incidences, total number of responders since. So that's just kind of the average number. At one time, council wanted to know how many members were responding to calls, and as an average, these are the calls. Below that is a chart which shows we have minimum requirements in the one column for calls, and then the number of people that have responded over the last 5 years. So it's not too bad. Some is high, a little higher, some is a little lower. And as indicated, alarm calls, when it's an alarm, the duty truck goes out first. We get the one engine rolling because we never know whether it's a fire, and then everybody else is standby at the fire hall until we confirm that whether it's on an alarm or that, and then they step down. I have a pie chart here which shows the calls that we've had over the first quarter. So medical calls is about 29%. Fire-related calls is 17%. Motor vehicle is 17% as well. Alarm calls is 22%. We've done some public service helping RCMP search and rescue with some calls at 8%. Had a number of wires down, which was 6%. We had one hazardous materials call at 1% type of deal. So that's where that's at. That's the incidents per year. And then by area, so the village, we've done 41% of our calls has been within the village area. 37% has been within Lillooet. And then the fire district is 10% and the regional district is 12%. So it's a total of 22% for the regional district overall. I'm kind of going through quick. If you have any questions, just let me know. Go ahead.
Sorry, just before you go too much further, page 69. I'm concerned about the amount of alarms at 22%. That's a huge toll on the department coming out. Is there anything we can do?
We've been looking at those, and like I say, the duty truck goes out, and so far it hasn't been alarm calls to the same residents. It's been alarm calls all over the place. So it's like either a person's putting in a new system. I know one at the community center, they are doing testing and they forgot to put the system on test. So we had to go down and check it out, because once there's a call, we check that. And we've talked to the alarm companies when they're doing that to let us know, and they've been calling. So that's reduced the number of the even though it comes through 911, we've been verified by it could go off. So those are some of the things that we're trying to work with the alarm companies to check. And then we're working with the residents too, because people are putting in new systems they don't understand, or the kids will push a button and sets it off. So these are some of the things, and working with the people that are putting it in to raise it up higher, make it a little bit more child-proof on some of those calls and that. So we're working at reducing some of that.
So there's nothing council would have to do as far as putting in bylaws that's, because you say it's not repetitive.
Right. We have a bylaw now for, like, if it's a repetitive call to the same place, we can start charging for that. But at this point, I've been working with the acting CEO, Ms. Fraser, and so far there hasn't been any additional same residence type of deal.
Thanks very much, Chief.
Robert, when you're looking at that pie chart, you've got 29% medical aid, 17% MBI.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the majority of MBI is on Highway 99. Would be not 100% of it, but I guess what I'm getting at is when we talk about fire, we talk about RCMP and what we pay and what the residents pay and how it works. We're trying to keep an eye on how much of our resources go to Highway 99.
Yeah.
So whether it's especially it helps when having conversations with ministers and talking about financing, about different aspects. Again, and we're looking at this with policing as well. Can you estimate, or can it be added to these reports a little bit, or your stats, where we could pull out Highway 99?
Yeah, we've got that actually set up. When I do this is kind of an overall, like, you don't want to, the more detail you have, the more things come up, but I do have all the detail on our stuff, and we can basically show you whether it's Highway 99 or whether it's in the village boundary in Mount Curry, and these are the things we're trying to, anything on Highway 99 is basically tagged as, I'm trying to do it as regional district, because that's one of the things that in the regional district, we go, all of Area C, we cover motor vehicle incidents. So I've tried to say that if it's a motor vehicle incident on the highway, let's classify that as Highway 99, which makes it, if it's within the village, like in the town of village, like let's say at the corner of, here, Prospect and that is not. So we're just breaking it down that way, so.
And I don't think I wouldn't add it to this pie chart. I wouldn't break it out in this one. I just think it would be an interesting number or stat to have on the side to be able to say, hey, our fire rescue guys respond to X amount of calls just to Highway 99. They're generally MVIs, and I would assume medical aid on there as well.
Yeah. Medical aid are mostly, we just do medical aid within the village boundary or the fringe, so medical aid is, I don't know, how would you break down the medical aid?
I don't know, that's more my question for you. So I guess it's just the MVIs then.
MVI.
What is the number I'm looking at then?
That MVI number, I don't know if we.
17%.
Yeah, 17%. I'd have to look, 17% of 81 calls, so is our MVI, so.
Okay.
And I can break it down, like I've got all the stats, I got that, I can put it in a side note. And
Maybe just a side note, it's just something that like I say, is helpful when having ministers meetings to be able to say, our residents pay for X amount, and I know the way it works, we've said this before. If I'm in a car accident down in the city, somebody's gonna look after me.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody has car accident up here, and it's part of what we pay as a service, and it transfers. But I've made the case before, and I think continue to make the case at times that, when you're a small rural town with a fairly major highway running next to you, then a lot of your resources, perhaps unfairly so, get absorbed onto policing and doing fire service on rescue on the on that major highway. So it would be a nice number to have.
Yeah, and that's easy to do because we have the stats at the office. So.
Thanks. Carry on.
Then we have Hudbay, because he broke it down, and as you can see on the one chart, I can't remember what page it shows a bar chart. So our MVIs for the village of Pemberton was 7, and then 7 within the regional district. So that's where it is. So that regional district would be Highway 99, and then the VOP would be kind of within the boundaries of the village. So we can break that down further to say if it's on the highway, like in front of the trailer court, for instance, that would be Highway 99 regional district. So then our membership at the end of the first quarter, we had 36 members, 2 full-time, 34 paid on call volunteers, and that membership is also complemented by 1 full-time administrative assistant. And then we have 2 term FireSmart people through the FireSmart grant that we received. And then we also, that's going to be extended for another year because we received the second grant in February of this year. So that will move forward for another year of 2 people. Our training in the first quarter, we did training sessions held once a week. As COVID was coming away, we could do 1 training session, which was great. However, the group that we have, we're breaking them up into 4 groups. And thank you to Deputy Chief Adams, as training officer, to get that all sorted out. As you can see, our training hours, we had 38 training hours. We had 1 public event, which was 1 hour. We had 5 different meetings with different organizations at roughly 5 hours, and our incidents of 81 incidents totaled 914 hours.
I understand there's a group that are finishing their next just about to finish the next level of training.
That's right.
Well, now.
Yeah, so we have another 8 people, so it's, yeah, I think it's 8.
Yeah, it's 8 people that have one simple course to complete their 1001s. So they'll be full NFPA approved 1001 certificate.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations on them. That's a lot of work to get to that.
Yeah, and that'll give us a total of, I think, around 30 people fully certified by the end, so.
Nice.
Super.
So it's just meeting all those requirements from the FOSS and the Office of Fire Commissioner, so. So the fire inspections, prevention and public education that we did 5 new business license application reviews and fire inspections for that. We did 1 public event, which was the Olympic cheer support that we had going on. The other thing which I missed, which I'm going to also let you know, that we received our sprinkler protection unit trailer in March the 23rd. It came in. And that was all through the funding of the wildfire and the grant from Whistler Blackcomb. So there was no taxpayers' dollars. We've got it into service in April. So we basically went through it, checked it all, inventoried it all. It's a requirement. And it will be on display May the 7th at the barn when we are doing the emergency preparedness day. So other than that, here's my report. Introduce Cameron Adams.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any questions? Seeing no questions, I would like to point out that this is Robert's last meeting with us as our chief. Cam is stepping up into the acting role. So first of all, thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. And
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
help with a seamless transition. So very much appreciated for you taking on that responsibility. And Robert, thank you for, what is it, 7 years now?
7 years.
7 years. I don't know, it seems to me it went by pretty quickly. I don't know about you, but thank you so much. You came in at a point where our fire department was really growing, going through changes from the smaller, fully volunteer little crew we had, solid crew, but it's grown and you've done a lot of great work for us. So we appreciate it. And we wish you all the best. We'll miss you. Good luck over in Cowichan. Is that
Cowichan Bay, yeah.
Good luck to you and your family. But thanks so much, Robert. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And it's been very enjoyable and I'm going to miss everyone here too. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your service, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When do you actually?
Put me through the same questions.
I'll come back. Yeah. Okay, next up, Adam Jonas. Yeah. We're going to talk about community wildfire resilience plan. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me. Try to make it quick-ish. Hopefully it won't take too long. So my report's here to inform Council of the establishment of a community wildfire resiliency plan committee, and to hopefully attain one member of Council as Council representative on that committee. As Chief mentioned in his report, we were successful in getting funding for another year of Fire Smart. And a portion of that funding is actually to do a new CWRP for the village. Once we do that CWRP, we actually can apply for more fuel treatment grants so we can get some mitigation work done around town. So that'll be a huge help for us. The CWRP committee, essentially, it's going to be meeting monthly, hopefully for around 8 months. We're working with BA Blackwell, the same people that did our CWPP in 2016. The reason we have to do another one, those documents only last for about 5 years, and then you have to redo them. So to get any more future funding, we have to have a new one. So that's why I put that in our grant for this year. Yeah, so essentially we'd be meeting monthly to go through kind of Fire Smart disciplines and creating a village plan that kind of brings in stakeholders and people that are involved in the decision-making process for developments, education, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be great to have a council member on board. In terms of a communications plan, things will go out through e-news, the village website, And we're hoping to do an open house for the village through BA Blackwell and the Fire Smart program. There's no communications plan established right now. Once we get the committee established and start having meetings, that communication plan will be built through Inca and Atkins CAO. For an impact on budget and staffing, I have touched base with most of the departments that are going to be involved, and they can absorb that into their day-to-day operations. For a council member, it's going to be 12 hours, approximately 12 hours of meeting time from now until January of 2023.
So that's the cycle is to be done around January 29th.
We're hoping a draft plan should be done in October, which kind of aligns with a new election. So hopefully you guys can stay on until that draft plan is at least completed and have the chance to review that. The final plan will be completed by January 2023. It does kind of adhere to that community climate action plan as well. A lot of fire smarting that we do is mitigation work, removing debris and waste and all that kind of stuff. So rather than we have those illegal dumping sites around town where people are just kind of spraying things, there's a few locations that's going to be a little bit. We will do some chipper services and programs like that, and we actually remove the debris for people. Last year, we were able to get rid of over 8,000 pounds of vegetative waste and work with Sea to Sky Soil. So 8,000 pounds of fuel for the village that has been removed, which is great. So this plan hopefully will address more of those concerns, and we can build on that momentum. So yeah, essentially just here to hopefully appoint a councillor to act as representation for that committee.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions to start? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. I'm quite interested in that committee, but what time frame do you see the meetings? Is that during the day so staff doesn't have to come in after hours?
I would like that, yeah, just so we can fit it in everyone's budget and there's no overtime and that sort of thing. I imagine most of them, with BA Blackwell being in Squamish and Vancouver, I imagine most of them are going to be virtual meetings.
And I can do that. I would be interested in.
So anybody else that's interested in?
I'll make the motion to appoint Councillor Craddock.
I wouldn't mind.
Okay.
I like if you're very passionate about it, sure. But I mean, if you're thinking to share the committees around, I would do it too. So whatever you like.
Toss a coin. I am interested and I hope to still be here next year in January. So I hope I can take it forward, but I could go either way too. It doesn't matter if you have the time.
Yeah, you know what? I think you sound like you're really interested. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Okay, so we'd like to make a motion in Councillor Zant.
That's the motion.
Oh, so Councillor Noble, go ahead.
I said second.
Oh, second, okay. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor Council. Appreciate it.
I'll hear from you on the meetings.
Yeah, we'll send it to you.
Thank you very much.
See you guys later. Okay, we're gonna go back to. Where were we now? I think we're on the CO verbal report, are we not?
Oh,
9B. CO.
Do we have to plug you in?
I'm now plugged in.
Okay.
I just need to go back to my little notes here to make sure that I'm on the right spot.
Page would, no, that's verbal, so we don't have a page.
Let's see. What am I missing here? Oh, I'm missing a page. Okay. So I would like to present, oh, there it is. Okay. I have no verbal report at this point.
That was really.
Sorry, folks. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Flip it around us.
Okay, we're on to 9B2. It's page 33 on your agenda, first quarter strategic priorities update.
Well, that part I can't report on. So thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is just an overview of the Office of the CAO for the first quarter. As you will recall, former CAO Gilmore was still here for January and February, and she left March 4th. And so I took over just for the month of March. So we sort of we're reporting out on emergency management, the work that Sarah Taves has been doing, which is great. We've continued with our OES Emergency Operations Center, or through our resource and recovery team, continue to meet on a somewhat regular basis, just as the public health orders are changing, to talk about what's next, or how to pivot as the new language is. And she's been working with our other partners as well. You may recall we had a couple of grant applications come forward in the first quarter, and we have found out that we've been successful in receiving the funding for the emergency support services grant application. So that's quite exciting. She'll be moving forward with that work. In communications and grant coordinator, Ms. Hutchison has been extremely busy preparing and submitting 5 grant applications, which support the strategic directions and priorities of council. And that's been a huge, I think most of February and March alone were just spent building those grant applications. So we are crossing our fingers and hopeful that we will be successful. She also supported, obviously, Ms. Taves on her grant program. And then working with the various departments with different communications plans for some of the activities that are coming forward for Emergency Preparedness Day. And she assisted with the Shpakamkan Community Forest Public Information Session and putting that information out to the public. Oh, and the Community Climate Action Plan, that was another big launch that we held in early April, but the background work was being done over February and March. And in human resources, we've been very busy with making some, bringing on staff, saying goodbye to some staff, moving staff from department to department. So Ms. White, our HR coordinator, has been significantly busy managing all of that, as well as supporting council with the recruitment of the new CAO. And we got some grant applications in for Canada Summer Jobs, and we've been successful in one that we know of so far, and we're waiting to hear on a couple of others. So
can you tell us which one we did get?
It was the Parks Labor one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. As well, Ms. White was involved with the negotiations related to the union agreement with the Public Works Department. And then our executive assistant, Lindsay Anich, she transitioned just at the end of January into this position. She'd previously been with Corporate and Legislative Services, and has been just supporting both former CAO and myself in the transitions, and been very active in coordinating with the Nuquantal and some of the other activities that had traditionally or had been previously the responsibility of the former position for the project and research coordinator. Since we don't have that position filled, we transitioned some of those activities into the HR or the executive assistant position, and she's doing a great job as she's getting her feet together. Then last, we have the strategic priorities chart. There haven't been a lot of changes from the fourth quarter that was submitted that you council would have seen in second meeting in February. But what I can note is that we will see transitions in the second quarter, because we'll see some movement as some items will be moving into more operations, and others have been completed. For instance, the climate action plan, community climate action plan, was a strategic priority of council, and it has now moved into operations. So it's actually off this chart and will move into the operational side down under development services. And yeah, so there's not a whole lot of change there. Like I said, we'll see more changes probably in the next quarter.
Awesome, thank you.
If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer.
Any questions? That's correct.
Just one question, Ms. Fraser. We've had job positions open in the paper, as many as 8. Can you give us an update on how we're making out on those? I know it's personnel, but at least give us an idea. Are we getting applications? Are things moving along with those?
We are getting applications. Some positions are harder to fill. For instance, the one position that we've had up quite consistently for the last couple months, I think, is a swim instructor. It's quite specific, and so you'll see that position possibly continue just because if somebody does come along, then we would certainly try to offer swimming lessons at 1 Mile Lake. But we are moving forward. We have started a number of interviews for the admin positions, and we will have a receptionist joining us in the middle of May, which is very exciting. So yeah, we're going to be just working our way through it. We still are not receiving a lot of applications. I have to it's quite surprising, but
I think that's pretty standard throughout the corridor.
we're not alone. Yeah.
Yeah, you look on in the newspaper and there's a quarter page ad for the One Nation, SLRD, RW, and they don't even give the job description. It's just bullet points of all the jobs that are offered. It's crazy.
42.
Yeah.
Did you find someone for the community forest?
We are hopefully interviewing next week. Yeah.
3 interviews set for May the 6th.
Any other questions? Somebody like to move a seat? Saying by Councillor Craddock, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are next up on need for glasses. Housing Needs Reports Program funding application. Hutchinson is going to join us. Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Sorry, it took a minute there to connect.
Snuck up on me there. We're on 93. We're talking about the Village Permanent Housing Needs Report update. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here this morning. The purpose of this report is to seek support for an application to the 2022 Housing Needs Reports Program for an update to the Village's Housing Needs Report. Council may recall that village staff completed the Age-Friendly Housing Needs Assessment Report in September 2019. At that time, the province was in the process of implementing new requirements for local governments who were conducting housing needs assessments as part of amendments to the Local Governments Act. Housing needs assessments that were conducted during that transition period were deemed to have met the requirements, even if they didn't perfectly align with the new legislation. Last month, the village received an invitation to apply for funding to update our housing needs report. This funding would enable the village to update the report and source extra housing needs data for inclusion in the report to ensure that it meets the new requirements of the LGA. And specifically, that would be, the number of units required to meet the current and anticipated housing need of the Pemberton community. That data will also be really important information as the village begins the official community plan review, because it will enable staff to compare future need with current and planned developments, better informing land use decisions moving forward. So just on to costings, the cost estimate for this update project totals $15,000 and includes all consultant fees, research, data collection, community engagement, publication development, etc. If the funding application is successful, the full $15,000 would be covered by the 2022 Housing Needs Reports Program. At this time, staff is seeking Council's endorsement of the application, which is a requirement of the submission. So therefore, I would like to recommend that Council supports the Village of Pemberton's application to the 2022 Housing Needs Reports Program up to an amount of $15,000 to fund the Village of Pemberton Housing Needs Report Update Project. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for hearing my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Hutchinson, any questions? Craddock.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thank you for the report. I'm just wondering, this is a very needed report as we're running into a lot of housing issues in the community, especially as far as cost is concerned. And we're getting a little bit of negative feedback on the 63 units that are potential for the community, but we haven't worked through that yet. What I'm wondering, if we do not get the funding, are we still going to find a way to do it through the staff? Because it is very important. In other words, I don't want to see it turned down for 6 months or a year waiting for more funding. I think it's really important to get it done.
Yeah, I may have to defer to acting CAO Fraser on this one. I mean, I believe that the initial report was done by a consultant, and we were looking to have this one done by a consultant. So I presume that we would probably have to have discussions with finance to find funding for that, but I'll defer to CAO, acting CAO Fraser.
I don't think we would have staff capacity to undertake it ourselves. It's kind of unique work, but we could look at our consultants and contractors budget and see if we can find some funds through that, or either through the OCP budget as well. But the one element of this that we feel quite confident that we will get support is that we did get a private invitation. So we feel that we're probably in a good place to receive this funding.
Yeah, we were asked to apply.
We were asked to apply, yeah.
Oh, that's great. I sure hope we get it, because I think it's important for the community.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? No, would somebody like to move the recommendation that we support the application? Councillor
Recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Noble. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you very much.
We are on to 9C, Corporate Legislative Services, first quarter regular council meeting, outstanding resolutions. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for taking the time to hear my report. As you know, I transitioned to the acting role just in the middle of March, so that I am reporting on the outstanding resolutions for the first quarter. The purpose of the report is to provide you with an update on outstanding resolutions as of the end of the first quarter, and the chart is attached as appendix A to the report. Two items on the list remain from the previous council. The boundary extension will be brought forward to the committee for discussion in the future. And the single use item strategy has been included in the community climate action plan, and that will be implemented by the climate action plan coordinator when that position is filled. The development cost charge by.
Sorry, Miss, if we can, well, it's still fresh just on that one. So we're not going to be looking at implementing any of that policy until we have a staff member dedicated for climate action. And
Unfortunately, we don't have capacity at this time.
okay, thank you.
The development cost charge bylaw amendment for the waiving a reduction of fees is in process and will be brought to council for consideration at an upcoming meeting in the current quarter. Consideration of options for the land located at the site of the old wastewater treatment plant, which is currently held under a Crown land tenure, will be incorporated into staff work plans when it can be accommodated. And the remaining items on the chart have been added to incorporate in the office of the CEO. The application report is going to be received for information. So questions?
Thank you. The Little White River Park and boat launch, I see that it's on the plan, but has there been a conversation with SLRD about this? Has anybody?
Not, we were waiting for the new CAO to join us. I've had one meeting with the CAO, but we didn't get into details of projects. So it's on the list of things to have conversation with them about.
Okay, because then there, I mean, there could be a willingness to,
Yeah.
I know we don't have much capacity to work on it, but there might be some willingness to drive this from the regional district perspective.
Yeah, and it would make sense.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt? Councillor Zat, second by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. You're also on the first quarter administration update.
So, first quarter administration update. Thank you for hearing this report. This is a brief report. As you know, our department has been operating with a skeleton staff in this quarter, losing our receptionist and bylaw officer in the first quarter. So we haven't been able to provide the usual level of reception services and bylaw services, but as Ms. Fraser indicated, we're hoping that's going to change quite soon. Considering the receptions again. But we have been issuing business licenses and dog licenses even more than we did in the past 3 years. Customer service requests are quite comparable in number to previous years' first quarters. Unfortunately, we've had no reports of vandalism in this quarter. We have issued fewer bylaw enforcement tickets, as we don't have a bylaw officer, and we haven't referred any of the existing tickets to collections, and we anticipate that bylaw enforcement activities will remain low in the current quarter. This concludes my brief report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing no questions, motion to receive. Councilor Kravitz, seconded by Councilor Antonelli. For the discussion, any opposed? Motion carries.
I just want to comment there. I just wanted to say thank you for the letters that went out in response to the affordable housing questions you had recently. I thought you struck a good tone. I'm appreciative of that.
Nice. Thank you. Okay. And we are on to 9D, Development Services First Quarter Report. Welcome, Mr. McCray back. Right on cue.
Yes, right on cue, yes.
He's still standing. He's okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Hello, good.
Oh, you look like you're better now.
Good to see you again.
Finished COVID?
Pardon me?
Are you finished COVID? Are you feeling better?
I wish.
Everybody, we're anxious to hear your first quarter report.
All right, without further ado, let's get going. So thank you, Mayor and Council. Here's the first quarter report for 2022 for the Development Services Department. I'll just give you the talking points as the report is in the agenda package starting on page 57. So in the first quarter of 2022, we received 41 building permit applications and we issued 25 building permits. That compares pretty closely to the first quarter of 2021 where we issued, where we received 45 applications and issued 38. A few less permits were issued in the first quarter of 2022 compared to 2021, just depending on the complexity of the permits and any differences in applicant response times to any additional requests. The DCCs collected in the first quarter were quite low compared to the first quarter of 2021, which is fairly typical. That number can be highly variable just depending on what kind of projects are in the pipeline at the time. I won't, as for the current planning projects, there's a summary presented in the report. I won't jump into any details on any particular files, although I'm happy to answer any questions on any particular files at the end of this report. For the long range planning projects, the OCP review and update is progressing. The RFP is just being polished with the goal of issuing it in early May. The next big one is the Community Climate Action Plan. So Council adopted this plan in March and it was also launched to the public in March with a nice film showing and a panel discussion, which was very well received by the community. I know there is a really strong desire by the community to see this plan get going. So I am trying to jumpstart the implementation of this plan with the resources that we currently have. There are a few actions that are low hanging, I would say, and some that we've already implemented. For example, after reviewing all the actions in the report, I found 20 that we could probably implement in 2022 to some degree with the current staff we have. And actually 4 of them, which we could already sort of claim that we are actioning. For example, that we are reporting on climate impacts in every relevant council report. So that's a good news story for sure. In the same vein, our BC Hydro Builders Incentive has been really well received by the community. And in fact, in the end, we were oversubscribed, which is a good sign for the program. So we are working at Nikki Segovia, our building and planning clerk, is working with BC Hydro to try to keep us in front of the line for the next batch of funds for this program, if and when it comes available. So that concludes my brief report of the first quarter 2021 or 2022, pardon me, for the Development Services Department. Are there any questions?
Questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. McCray. On page 58, development permit 88. Has everything else been approved through the planning department except the MOTI referral?
there's a few moving parts left over on development permit 88. There's the housing agreement is just in initial discussion with the developer. There is alignment between staff and the developer on the terms of that housing agreement, but just a few more discussions being had there. And the developer is waiting for final word, I believe, from MOTI, although they have been given sort of an initial direction from MOTI. So it's getting very close. There's also the discussion on some easements that exist on this property that we're working through as well. They're mostly just technical details at this stage. So this one's getting fairly close. We do expect to see a building permit application for this site in the near future. I noticed that on my drive in to grab my laptop this morning that the developers' crews were brushing up their fencing on the site, which is a nice thing to see. I know that fencing falls apart a few times a year, so it's looking nice again.
So if I might follow up, so the expectation is that could be in the ground this year, and can you just remind me, was that 48 or 52 units? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I believe it was, it was 50 or even 60 units. I don't recall off the top of my head exactly. Yeah, there is a good chance that they'll get started this year.
Good, and that's all rental housing, isn't it?
That's correct.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. McCray.
Similar to DVP 125, they're the Wylands. I know it's we're waiting for information from the applicant. I'm just wondering how active it has been, or if it's just sort of sitting out there right now.
Yeah, we've been in discussions with the applicant on DVP 125, just reviewing the issues which have been brought to our attention by the applicant and trying to find a path forward on those items.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Just a quick question, not about the application, but you mentioned BC Hydro, and I'm wondering if we have a process for having the landscaping on commercial properties in the village reinstalled if it's died.
Pardon me, I didn't quite catch that.
Do we have a process for ensuring that landscaping is reinstalled in the village if it's died for commercial properties?
That belongs to the commercial properties or
I'm
belongs to?
thinking of BC Hydro.
Yeah,
I see what
we
you're
have they have a 1-year guarantee. And then that's the process. We have been in contact with BC Hydro on the status of their landscaping, which is
Mediocre at best.
that's nicely, but
Yeah.
yes.
Any questions? Seeing no further questions, would somebody like to move receipt? Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McCray.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, I believe Christine, join us at the table, please. Ms. Burns, we're going to do our Recreation Services first quarter report.
Morning.
Nice to have you here live.
Yes, it's nice to be here. This is my first one in 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Where have you been?
On Zoom. Which means you get my whole layout like I normally do it.
Perfect.
So good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for receiving me this morning to hear a little bit about Recreation's first quarter. We're pretty excited where we went to in the first quarter. However, it didn't start off fabulous. We were still under PHO requirements in the first quarter, which impacted our services and our ability to be open. I think we only started January with children's programs, and that was it until about January 18th. And, but we're still really excited. We had 120 value-added classes between January 1st and March 31st, which was 594 unique visits, 37 registered fitness classes, which was 208 unique registrants. Which is all super exciting for fitness classes, considering they had about a 3-week hiatus from being able to operate in any capacity whatsoever. As well as the fitness center. So it was super exciting. Staff did spend their time very wisely, though. It was an opportunity for us to get in and deep clean everything, which was we're pretty good on the cleaning front at this stage in the game, but it's definitely still a requirement, obviously. Seniors programming continued at the same capacity that it's been at, which is lovely, except for the addition of the Pemberton Stitchers return to the rec facility, which was wonderful to see the ladies back. And they got a few quilts made. And then youth programming, we're still navigating getting youth back into the facility. However, I think that has a lot to do with pandemic and how everything has rolled out. So there was lots of planning done on how to engage the youth to get them back into the youth center for second and third quarter, and fourth for that matter. So we're pretty excited about what's coming up. So that's nice. And we were really excited about the return of drop-in sports. So adult drop-in sports kind of got the green light finally, which was great. So we were able to start with pickleball and badminton inside the facility. And we were successful in receiving a $1,500 grant from Via Sport, which helped support us in purchasing some new equipment, specifically pickleball, because that's not equipment that we had on hand previously. Pre-registered fitness center use, we had 5,086 unique fitness center bookings, which is absolutely wonderful, considering everything that we went through. So that was great. As well as we saw a steady increase in pass sales across the board, which was wonderful. That was not something I anticipated or expected, was to see an increase in pass sales, just because there are still lots to take into consideration with different opinions and different demographics as far as using public facilities at this time. Facility maintenance, we spent much of the first quarter juggling PHO, new requirements and things like that. So as you may recall, the first week of January, we were all ordered back home. So what that meant was ensuring that we had safe spaces for staff to work in again. So it required a few more COVID expenses as far as putting up some plexiglass to ensure we had very distinct workspaces for staff to continue to be safe in the workplace. We had an issue with our automatic door, which was a bit not totally surprising considering the way we've been using the door for the last 2 years, but the motor died. So we had to spend a bit of money fixing the automatic door. And then, as you're all aware, we had a very significant snow season. So there was lots of time spent outside shoveling, a lot of shoveling this year, which, none of us mind. It's always nice to get some fresh air in the middle of the day, right? February, we started working on the accessibility project with the library. Currently, we've moved forward with accessible doors at this stage in the game. They've all been ordered, and we're pretty excited about that for the library and the south side of the facility to be accessible from that perspective. Lots of prep for drop-in sports. And Jeff spent his time wisely doing lots of prep on monthly checklists, creating them for himself, as well as prepping lots for spring and summer operations as well. So ordering for the spray park and things like that. So he's pretty ready to go for second quarter outdoor activities. I think there was contract renewals in the month of March. We renewed our cleaning contractors. We renewed all of our summer contracts as well. And then indoor facility use, we're pretty excited about how that's progressing as well. Obviously, things started to pick up as soon as the PHOs were lifted in later March. I think it was as soon as the face covering was lifted on March 11th, the phones just started ringing, right? So, which is great. We're excited I'm excited to see how much we'll have increased on facility usage with user groups and private bookings and things like that as people start to have birthday parties and all of those fun things. We did still see, 2,223 hours of facility usage that's not programmed by us specifically. So that's external organizations utilizing our space. So that was nice to see. Very little happening in the parks and fields for first quarter. I think we had 2 bookings at the barn and 2 at 1 Mile Park. And then March, we had snow on the ground until approximately March 25th. So it wasn't until the very end of first quarter that we started to actually be able to even see that there was something underneath the snow this year, which was great. I've mentioned the provincial health orders. They definitely dictated how we functioned, and they still do, which is wonderful. It's nice to have that direction. It's also nice to not need it anymore, which is exciting. Obviously, we had some staffing and budget transitions and challenges with, and that all relates to PHO. But I think we're in fairly decent shape. I think the only dilemma that we're running into now is the fact that we've hired casual staff in casual positions, and now they're getting other opportunities as everything is opening up. So that's kind of where we're at after first quarter. So please receive this as your first quarter report. And if you have any questions, by all means.
Thank you, Ms. Burns, much appreciated. And I'm looking forward on your behalf, for more normal operations this spring, summer. Couple of quick questions. Drop-in sports, has there been any conversation with the school district about using their facilities to open those drop-in sports?
There has. The school district has tightened the reins, so to speak. So right now, the cost is, we need to figure out the costing, because right now it's prohibitive to us running drop-in sports at the high school, just because of the amount that we charge for a drop-in sport and what we'll have to pay in order to facilitate the activities there. So we're in negotiations, and we've had some decent conversations with Ms. McPhee at the Pemberton Garage, and we're hopeful for a full drop-in sport repertoire of activities in fourth quarter.
Because that gym is important to our recreational assets there, to be able to offer that there.
Yes.
The activities that we can't do in the Great Hall. So overlap from first quarter reporting to current, you mentioned the fields and all that. As you said, it was late snowpack, and it's been a very cold spring by usual standards. There's been, I know a number of us, if not all of us, have had some conversations in the community about the readiness of the soccer fields and the ability for kids to get out there and play. I know the community is anxious to get out and play on the fields. I know council was anxious to see kids play on the field. And we also know that we want to protect our fields and make sure that they don't get trashed in the early going, so that they're there for the whole season. Can you just give us a little bit of an update on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So we have been actively monitoring the field since the end of March. So that includes our summer contractor, kicks in April 1st. However, he did start monitoring the fields earlier, as well as Jeff, our facility maintenance coordinator. So we've been out there regularly. One of the activities in the month of March was moving a galvanized gate from Gates Lake out to the meadows. I'm sure you've seen that there are now rocks along the parking between that define parking and field for obvious reasons. I think it was an $8,000 spend to fix those fields this time last year. As a result of the late snow, the ground is significantly saturated, as well as we were receiving frost. Up until not that long ago. Yeah, exactly. So there's active algae growing on the field from the amount of water that has been stagnant and sitting. However, our goal right now is to, well, this week anyway, we've been obviously super hopeful that the weather would work in our favor. Unfortunately, it hasn't, but our plan this week is to get on there on part of the field. So, if we're talking never eat shredded wheat, the south end of the field is obviously a little higher than the north end of the field. So the goal is that the contractor will get on there with equipment and mow where he can mow. And then at that stage, we'll be able to let all of our organizations that would like to do organized sport on the fields know that where they can access is mowed. And it will be defined quite significantly because where it's not mowed in some aspects, it is growing. It's just the outer rims and some other aspects that are still too wet to get machinery on at this time. So we anticipate activity being welcomed May 1st, or May 2nd, is Monday, May 2nd.
For the Meadows.
For the Meadows. Yeah, as far as Denda Field goes, we're still shooting for May 15th. I think Ali Chappelle is back this week. I've been in active communications with Melanie LeBlanc, who has been extremely helpful. Currently, right now, she's managed to thatch, she's managed to aerate, she's managed to seed to the tune of about $4,000 worth of seed. And now it has currently been fertilized. And so now we're weather dependent, right? So now we're really hopeful that this little forecast of some warm sunshine later this week really works in our favor. But we do anticipate May 15th is still our planned date for Denda Park as well.
Thank you for that update. From a communication side on that one, you know, some of the conversations I've had have had the unfortunate tone of suggesting that we haven't worked hard enough or don't care enough to get the fields open as soon as we can. Obviously, staff's working hard. Obviously, it's due mostly to weather this year. How can, have you had discussions with staff and user groups in terms of how we can better our communication and work with the user groups so that everybody's on the same page in terms of when the fields are going to be available, why and what's being done, and just, you know, maybe more regular updates and meetings with those user groups so that there's, like I said, everybody's on the same page and understanding what the process is. So there's not confusion or misunderstanding as to why some of the fields aren't open.
Yeah, I think, you know, COVID has prevented many things. So, and as this is, I'm approaching my 2-year anniversary this week. Thank you very much. I personally haven't been in the role to open fields. So we're learning lots at the moment, which will set us up for success for future. At this time right now, we have had a few meetings and we've actioned a few items, including some frequently asked question sheets that have been issued to Pemberton Youth Soccer Association for them to share with their membership. I think that we have drawn on our neighbors in the sense that, you know, there's been some contact with the RMOW and how do they communicate with their field users and things like that. Now, many of those organizations have had longer standing relationships. So we're still working on that, but I think we're set up for future success with Spring Startup, obviously, because it's been a bit of a bumpy road and our communication could definitely have been better. So I think it's just kind of been a really interesting spring as far as what the needs exactly are. And us now understanding that, for instance, Pemberton Youth Soccer would like to be on there sooner than we thought. So understanding that.
Along those lines, I'm just hopeful, and I know through some conversation that it seems to be happening, but I just want to make sure it's clearly happening, that we set up a meeting schedule or whatever that looks like so that in the winter, late in the winter, we're having a conversation with POISA in the spring, whatever that looks best for both yourself and for the association and Slow Pitch and all those users to just be clear about what's going on, and so that the communication is strong and user groups know how to move forward.
Yes, I agree completely.
On that note, one of the things that we've committed to as a result of a meeting with PYSA is to have a postseason meeting in October, November, and set a date for a preseason meeting in February so that we can start those conversations. And that was something that was agreed to by PYSA, that they're agreeable to that. And you know, I think that will be something that Christine and her team will follow through on with all the user groups. And as to Christine's point, you know, with the PHOs continuously off and on and off and on, it's been a challenging couple of years just to figure out when you can actually do these things and holding on to see if you can, or if it's going to be canceled again, or, you know, so I think all things considered, and with new fields, learning how that they all operate, and what that's going to look like is definitely, it's a starting point. We're going to improve from here for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we totally get the fact that it's been a confusing, period, new fields, all that stuff. So there's no blame here. It's just about looking forward and going, what is the communication strategy so that, again, everybody
can play.
Everybody plays as soon as they can. Everybody knows how to advertise their programming, how to move forward with their own work. So
Exactly. I want you on a basketball court inside next winter as well.
there you go.
So my goal is that everybody plays.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's always my priority.
Okay, further questions? Go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, if you mind, just to go back to the new fields that were built. Is there any issues at all with the drainage or the material out there that would be causing any issues?
At this time, no. At this time, we're just dealing with a really young turf, and we're following the recommended maintenance schedule that was provided by the installers. So, and as well at the, so that's where that is at. Right now, everything is doing what is intended. Obviously, we have had a very unique spring, even for Pemberton. So things are definitely a little slower than anticipated as far as growth.
I can understand that. And of course, from a layperson's point of view, I went out there yesterday, looked at all the fields. And of course, looking at them, it looks like, nothing wrong with these fields. Let's get kids out there playing. But thank you for that. I appreciate that. And the second thing I'd just like to say, I am playing pickleball, and I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying it. And I want to encourage other people in the community, whether they're 50 or older or whatever, to get out Mondays or Saturdays, because it's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Appreciate
I'm
it.
glad to hear that.
Thank you for putting it in place.
Oh, my pleasure.
Mr. Sheehan, did you have anything to add to the soccer field maintenance?
Yeah, I can speak a bit to the new fields. Just so like you mentioned, Councilor Craddock, sorry to jump in.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. Please do.
Listening. So with the new fields, we, like was mentioned, the winter caused quite a bit of damage on the field, like just grass died off. It's young grass still. And so we've done a top dressing and a reseeding. So the main reason for that date of May 15th is because the seed needs to grow and establish. So it looks okay, like the field is looking good, but you'll start to see young grass sprouting up in the next week or so. And then hopefully by May 15th, it's established enough to play on it. Otherwise, it'll just get more and more patchy throughout the year. So I think the main messaging that we've been giving is that we can get on the field now, but come June, July, there will be grass, there'll be big dirt patches, and then we'll be dealing with that all year. We'd much rather have it well established before starting the season.
And with the, as the field matures, again, the weather every spring will decide when we're able to open it, but as it matures.
The need for overseeding shouldn't be every year. Like I understand the Meadows field, the main issue is drainage, but those fields are designed to drain quite well. The main issue right now is just around grass coverage. So we're just seeding it again. And periodically you do need to do that. But also with the frost that we've been having, you can't really get out on the grass. The grass roots are weak when it's frost, then they break, and that causes more damage to the grass. So people using the fields when it's still frost is generally just a no-go. And as Christine mentioned, you can't get equipment out there either, because that will cause damage too. So we wanted to seed first thing in the spring, but we have to wait until we can actually go out on the field with heavy equipment to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Burns on the report? Seeing none, thank you so much. Can I get a motion to receive, please? Councillor Antonelli, second by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Burns.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Thanks. Okay. Next up, we're on 9G, operations first quarter report. Jima.
Hello, thanks for having me. So I'm here to present the first quarter report for operations department. As always, first quarter being January till March is largely consumed with snow clearing. And as Christine mentioned, there was a lot of snow this year, a lot of big dumps in December, but it took us weeks just to clean that up. I included a couple of photos there in the report just to see, I'm sure you all saw the sidewalks and roads and the mountains beside each of them. So it was just quite a challenge for sure. But you know, we're always prepared for that. I know that there was some areas that took longer to open up, and at some points we were just doing main roads and side roads, you know, only when we could. But I think the guys did a really good job and worked a lot of hours, a lot of holidays too, especially with around Christmas time. There was when we got a lot of the dumps. So another thing that I noted, which we don't normally have to do, is a lot of roof clearing of snow. And I included a photo there of our gazebo in the park, just as an example, but we had to get crews out on roofs because I think we had some of these big dumps and then it warmed up and rain coming, and that's the snow just acts as a sponge and can cause structural damage. So luckily we didn't have any damage anywhere, and yeah, we stayed on top of that. A couple other highlights. I won't go through everything here, but a couple other highlights. Well, in the spring, we do our regular spring cleanup as well, and we're in full spring mode now. Also, we ratified a new collective agreement with QP 2010, which is representing our public works crew. So happy to say that that was all negotiated without any issues and no disruption of service. So quite pleased with that result. And also I presented to council over the last few months on this, but I thought I'd mention it here. We've been working quite a lot on some water projects, specifically the water conservation plan and the preliminary design for potential water treatment for iron and manganese. And we've applied for a grant for that. So I included another image there of just sort of a preliminary design layout of what they're proposing for our treatment plant. Otherwise, sort of our regular maintenance as well as a few projects. I mean, we do our regular inspections on those stations, wastewater plant, water conditioning plant, etc. We completed our second year of the wastewater treatment plant receiving environment monitoring program. This council may remember, there was a requirement of the Ministry of Environment to do essentially samples from in the river where our outflow is. Now we know we test very vigorously the effluent of the wastewater plant. And we know that compared to the requirements, we're well within the limits. But the idea of this is to prevent a place from outflowing into a river that might have accumulation in spots or cause this environmental disruption. Now we outflow into the Lillooet River, which is, as you all know, very large and fast flowing and a lot of volume. So it's like a drop in the bucket, but it is a formality that we unfortunately have to do. This environmental monitoring program, our results are all, we've passed in flying colors. As I said, our effluent we know is well within the limits, and it's going into this very fast moving river. So we're hoping to get the ministry to give us a bit of an exemption on this and not have to do it every year, because it costs us about $35,000 every year. Have to get environmental technicians out, and they have to get boats, and they have to do 5 different days in a 30-day period. So it has to be a professional, designated professional. So we can't just do it ourselves, unlike our plant, which we can sample and submit those results. So it's quite involved and quite pricey. So we're hoping now, after 2 years was sort of their minimum. We had mentioned this when they told us of the requirement. We said, well, we're such a small plant in a huge river. It's different, you know, even in Whistler, they go in the Cheakamus, and the flows vary so much in the season that you could presumably see an issue with that, but we've never had that issue. So we're hoping to talk with the ministry now that we've completed 2 years of this, and we can kind of show that we are still, there's no concerns or issues. We've also been working quite a bit. As council probably also remembers, we've had some issues with our outfall, specifically getting buried in sediment. So we had another dive inspection. It's only required to do that every 5 years, but that's something that I think is very worthwhile doing every year now, just given what we saw happen. And we also had a river hydrological survey done. We're trying to sort of model what's happening out in the river. We're working with the same consultants that are doing a lot of the flood modeling for the Diking district. So they're quite familiar with the area. So we haven't seen the final report on that yet, but that a lot of that took place in the first quarter. Unfortunately, the outfall inspection, we did find that the same issue is occurring. So sediment is continuing to pile up, and one of the diffuser ports was no problem. It's still flowing perfectly, but the other one is getting buried again in sediment. So it's going to be continuing to be a challenge. At least now we have a much better idea of what's going on, and we have some other ideas and also checks. For example, we use dye in the outfall to see where the plume comes up and to help locate. And one of the thoughts was that, because actually when we did the hydrological survey, they found that there wasn't a significant aggradation. So we're wondering if there's a bit of a seasonal scouring and then piling up, because we always check at low flow because that's when the divers can get in. But we're wondering if at high flow, potentially their scouring occurs. So we're hoping to test that with the dye at high flow to see if now two distinct plumes form. Stuff like this. We're also working with some engineers on some potential changes to that outflow to either, add some buoyancy to the diffuser port or whatever it might be. So we're really trying to work on this, but it is a concern. Moving on, standard stuff, sort of pothole repairs, minor roads maintenance, and parks cleaning up. Spring cleanup obviously is quite an endeavor, especially with all the snow we had and gravel. We also been working quite a bit in the first quarter and now on our SCADA controls improvements. I've talked about this for the last couple of years, but we're really putting the pedal down now and finishing some of this up. So really exciting to see some of the controls getting updated. And again, the public wouldn't really see a lot of this, but it helps with our monitoring and alarming, but also with our data, and especially, which I'll kind of get into, and I've talked quite a bit about on water conservation. It's going to really help us with some of the tracking on our well health and usage. Other than that, with parks, we kind of talked about the fields already. That was mainly in the start of the second quarter, just towards the end of March there though as well. So I mentioned it, Christmas lights removal, spring cleanup. And we also did quite a bit of preparation for the bike skills project, which is well underway now and quite exciting. There's a lot of progress out there as we speak, as well as some initial planning on the Lot 13 site there, just looking at, because as we know, we've been awarded this grant, and we were just spending some time looking at environmental and design proposals for that. So yeah, other than that, we were also involved in some initial planning meetings with for Fire Hall and Municipal Hall, that RFP, and we've been spending some time on confined space procedures, specifically at the wastewater treatment plant, talking with the Diking District on the future ring dike proposals, as well as working with the interdepartmental Fire Smart team. So just thought I'd mention a couple of these interdepartmental, interjurisdictional projects that we're working on. And yeah, I think I included some photos, talked about all of them. So that pretty much concludes my report.
Mr. Klima, what's the completion date, hopeful completion date for the bike skills park?
I don't want to overcommit, but we're looking pretty good for our June start date, which is sort of what we're saying. I think realistically, we did get a later start than planned, just given the weather. There was still snow out there in March. So I think that we're hoping to have it sort of open for July is
the asphalt features.
Asphalt, we're planning to start asphalt next week. So the pump track is almost fully built. We've run into a few issues with some of the material that's out there. As council may recall, a lot of it came from various places and was preload, and we didn't always have this site planned for this particular amenity, and it was sort of a bit of a leftover wedge of the property where certain things got moved around. So there was a little bit of inconsistency with, like, for example, the material on the top was quite good for building bike tracks and jumps, but then as they dug down, they found some more clay that was quite wet and squishy. It was actually quite interesting. It was almost like a trampoline walking on some of this. So also, I think if we waited till July to build it, it would all dry out and we could form it quite a bit easier. But given that we're doing this still in spring, we were trying to push to get it open for summer. We had to move some material around. Luckily, with the nearby development having excess material that they're sort of just trying to get rid of, they've kindly, well, I think it's a mutually beneficial arrangement that we've had. We're receiving some of their material this week to help make up for some of that shortfall. And yeah, it's looking really cool. I don't want to encourage you to go and check it out just because it's quite a busy construction site. There's a lot of equipment out there. But yeah, in the coming weeks, we'll see a lot of it getting wrapped up. And I just want to mention too, there is some concern that people might try and get out on these tracks before they're done. And I really want to encourage people not to, because, you know, there's some jump areas that aren't finished. And then, yeah, so I just, we're talking now about sort of safety measures that we can put in place. Of course, fencing, these types of things, people can always get around. So I just really hope that the community is patient, and we are hoping to open this in July. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to play out there. But until we officially open it, I do ask that everyone stays away from there.
Awesome, appreciate it. I'm looking forward to that. I know folks are anxious to get out there. It's gonna be great.
And if anyone wants to drive up Sunstone, you get a nice overhead view of it, so you can kind of see the activity. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend going nearby there because it's quite a busy, active site. So.
Thank you. Questions?
We've been hearing about standing water on the rec site. Do you have any thoughts on that and drainage?
Yes. Well, we're working currently on overall stormwater management plan. Well, that's already been completed. So part of the Bike Skills Park work is we upgraded a drainage line. And actually, it's shown in that drawing, sort of a diagonal line across the park there. We have a 600 millimeter underground drainage pipe that connects to both soccer fields, as well as a future stub out for, you know, where potential big facility will go. That's been sized according to the stormwater management model that was prepared by our engineering consultants. So that will accommodate all of the drainage for the site, which will eventually take it to a pond, which will be placed sort of out in the outfield of that baseball diamond that isn't built yet, but you know, we have the preload footprint of that. We're actually currently digging that pond as we speak. We have a machine on site, a 65-foot reach excavator. It's another quite interesting scene to see. Yeah, we're digging that pond right now. So that will be the facility. It's being built to accommodate, I don't want to quote the wrong amount, but I think it's 200-year flows at a release of 2-year rates type of thing. So it's going to be actually probably oversized for what we need, but we kind of have this little wedge of area that we're going to hope to make that a little bit of a, you know, a place you can walk your dog, people can walk through the site. This is going to be a premier park for us, obviously. So we want to include a bit of lawn space that people can just hang out in the sun. It's a nice sunny spot. So yeah, we're building that pond now. As for the pooling water, I did get an email about this the other day from a resident, and I think they were referring to more where the building and between the soccer field is. That area was formerly a large rock outcrop. So that's, you know, that was a quarry that's been all blasted away. So that's solid rock. So there's not good drainage there. So that would explain why a low spot would have pooling water. But as I say, eventually when that's developed, that will drain through this whole drainage system. Until we have those facilities, though, we're not going to really drain that off. We've talked about filling in some of those low spots so that the water doesn't pool there. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I wonder if it's possible for council to have sort of an updated diagram that sort of explains what's going on in its entirety. Do we have that?
Of the whole site?
Yeah, just about like the pond you're talking about and maybe where the lawn would be, because
Sure.
there's a lot of discussion around it, and I feel like, you know, we have bits and pieces of it, but It's not, it would be nice to have the whole picture so we could talk to the public.
Yep.
Sure, I mean, it's something that we're working on presently, so
Yeah.
as far as I know, there's quite a bit of information on the website, like for the whole site. I know there's like a bit of a shape of a pond, but it's not a very detailed design. Mind you, we haven't prepared a landscape design out there yet, so I don't, I think we focus on the functionality of it, and then obviously we'll pretty it up later, but definitely we could provide council with that. I mean, once we finalize the pond design, we would definitely publish it on I think we have a dedicated page for this park, so it shows the overall site and where the pond would be.
And at council roll call, we have made some adjustments to address some of these. So in terms of an overall site plan, we'll have to look at that. And I mean, we know what we're doing, but to your point, we don't have, this is what it is, because there's been changes based on the last year of activity. So we'll see about what we can do to create like a master plan map that shows everything and get it up on the website. There is information on Denda Park on the website, and the master plan can be found there, as well as the FAQ and soccer fields and all of that kind of stuff. But we'll look at a map.
There is a map on the website as well.
Yeah.
I just don't think it really
Shows everything.
shows the pond very detailed. It just sort of shows a shape of like stormwater management area.
Yeah, we'll update it.
Yeah, that'd be helpful for our communications, for the correspondence we're getting. And I see these lines for the drainage. I think that's, I know it's all in the works. It's just nice to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we don't always put like all of the infrastructure on the public communications just because I don't really want people to call me and say, you should have used a 750 millimeter pipe, not a 600 millimeter pipe. And, we get that a lot. So, I mean, I'm happy to share information with people when they email us, but yeah, for sure. We can share more.
Yeah, I was glad that you made your report today, because I actually went out and looked at the bike park yesterday, so hopefully I'm not in trouble.
No, it's okay.
Two things, it's just, I walked around and it's just super exciting. That's gonna be a huge area out there for the kids, and some of the corners already built and everything, and then the lifts and stuff look really great. The other thing I liked about going out there yesterday is you can walk around both soccer fields on pavement.
Yes.
And what a treat that is. So that was really nice too. So congratulations on the way that's going. But I also want to pass along to your staff, the flowers already in the flower beds look fantastic. It's just nice coming into town this morning, really noticing. So I'm waiting to see what's coming up in the traffic circle. So that'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, they're starting to grow there for sure. Yes, thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I should give the credit obviously to the crew. They worked really hard last year to plant some bulbs, and for exactly this, hoping that in the spring we'd get some fresh bulbs growing. So yeah, thank you.
Any questions, comments? Tom, with regards to the wastewater treatment plant and the sediment, knowing what we know now, and then like you said, you're trying to measure scouring, and so there's so many things we don't know. But with the work we had to do last time, and knowing that the sediment will continue to build back up, do we have the ability to do like lighter, regular maintenance so that it's not as big a project as we had to do last time?
Definitely. Last time, like the first initial, extraction was, we didn't even really have a location on this thing. So one of the things we did was we modified the diffuser ports on this outfall. So hoping that they wouldn't get buried, we kind of put some extensions on them. It's amazing to see that they are getting buried, but we also tied rope to them, and so we were able to locate them. We just know that they're under sediment, but potentially we could just bring in a barge or something with a smaller excavator that could just take some scoops out. We know the location. At the time, it's like a needle in the haystack trying to locate the thing. So we had to build a berm out into the river that protected it. And of course, there's the environmental side of things too. It would be work within a stream. That would probably be the most costly to this if we were to do it regularly, say annually, like the Diking District does for some of the sandbars. But definitely it can be done. And that's something that we have to evaluate, is whether or not the cost of doing that or completely redesigning the outfall would be feasible. I think for now, we're still monitoring and hope to get a better insight onto the necessity of that. Like I said, we've been doing the regular dive inspections, which is only required every 5 years, but part of the reason that last time we did a dive inspection and 5 years had passed, and so we didn't realize the extent of that. And then now also, as I mentioned, we have sort of some other checks that we can do throughout. I'm also working with some consultants on a flushing system that would involve like an intake from the river to flush out the outfall, hopefully, blasting a bit of a hole from the sediment piling up. So we're hoping the combination of all of these things would negate the need for any extraction of gravel. Essentially, the flow from this pipe keeps the gravel from backing it up, but all it takes is for something large or I don't know, a big slough of it to really clog in there to block that flow.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of working on ways to keep that flow going or flush it periodically and monitoring. But as of right now, I'm hoping not to have to do any extraction, mainly because of the environmental implications of that. We would need full work within a stream approvals and but as we know, the Diking District does that regularly and it can be done. I would prefer to avoid it.
Yeah, I just didn't, obviously, it sounds like we need to include it in part of our regular maintenance and have a plan to, so not.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's what we're trying to weigh right now, is like, do we just extract? Or do we modify, do we do preventative? And we were hoping what we did during that project, we also dug a large channel that we were hoping to create a scouring channel, but the whole thing filled in. So that's based on the surveys that were done. It's just so much material coming down, and the river is so fast moving and there's such a volume that it's really challenging to modify that. So I guess other than, potentially building a large structure that's in the millions, and then it's like, is it worth investing this in our wastewater treatment plant at that location, which, as we know, has other hazard concerns and conditions. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of weighing the options, just kind of keep putting the Band-Aids on or redesigning or talking about a new plant eventually somewhere else.
Yeah. And last question, I don't get no who it's for, but can one of you give us an update on the lighting around the rec fields?
Yeah, I can do that. So, well, the lighting's in place, obviously. We just need the hydro connection. So I've been talking with BC Hydro. They were ready to go in the spring, but they will have to cut across Sunstone Way to get to the source of power. And so they were asking us whether or not we wanted to do that and leave a road cut until the asphalt plants opened up, or wait until the asphalt plants open to do that. So we would prefer not to leave a big open road cut. So we said to just wait until the spring. So as far as I know, I've been seeing Alpine trucks around. So I've heard the Whistler plant is opening soon if they haven't already. So we're just waiting on Hydro to complete those works, but it should be within the next month or two. I'd say by June, we would have lights on there.
Thank you.
And I know that we've had a couple people from the public mention this, and I just want to remind everyone that the lights were actually only meant to be for field 2, the second field, which we wouldn't be playing on right now anyways. But we managed to find enough funds to add lights to field 1 during that project. So I think we should consider the lights a bonus, and the fact that we can have lights on that field this season is a bonus.
For sure. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to receive those reports? Councillor Kravitz, second by Councillor Antonelli. Any opposed? Carries. Thank you, Mr. Chima.
Thanks, everyone.
We've been at this 2.25 hours. Does anybody need a 5-minute recess? Okay, let's recess for 5 minutes.
Just like 30 seconds.
Yeah. We're getting through it. Let's try standing. So we're going to call the regular meeting back to order, and we are on item number 10A, bylaws for first, second, third readings. This is regarding the Village of Permanent Election and Assent Voting Bylaw number 925. Ms. Kennedy.
And the purpose of this report is to present to council for first, second, and third readings, the election and assent voting bylaw number 925, 2022. This bylaw will replace bylaw number 831, 2018, that was adopted for the 2018 general local elections. The COVID-19 pandemic prompted local governments who were running by-elections and assent voting during the pandemic to seek additional means of voting. And at this time, under Local Government Act, local governments couldn't offer mail ballot voting except to electors who couldn't attend in person. The province issued ministerial orders to permit local governments to offer mail ballot voting during the pandemic. And then subsequently in June of 2021, made a change to the Local Government Act to allow local governments to offer mail ballot voting to any elector who requests it. By first establishing mail ballot voting in their bylaw and setting up the timelines and procedures that would differ from in-person voting opportunities. Mail ballot voting is convenient and accessible, and residents unable to attend general voting day or who suddenly find themselves unable to attend due to illness may arrange for someone else to pick up a mail ballot package and may have it delivered to the voting location on voting day. So many people who might otherwise not be able to vote would be able to, we can offer this to them. So this bylaw, the main change it makes from the previous bylaw is to add the opportunity for mail ballot voting. It doesn't make any other significant changes to the way we run elections or assent voting. We're supportive of adding mail ballots, and school district number 48, Sea to Sky, also has indicated their support and their willingness to share costs. So the recommendation of this report is that the Village of Permanent Election and Assent Voting Bylaw number 925, 2022 receive first, second, and third readings. And please answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Kennedy, any questions or thoughts on the mail-in ballots concept? Personally, I support it. I think the more we can get people out to vote anywhere, but especially in our local community, the better. And this is just another way to encourage the democratic process. So personally, I'm supportive of it.
Yeah, I like the idea. I agree. I think getting people to vote in whatever form they can is a huge part of just for promoting democracy. Honestly, I think it's a great way to just get people out there. And if they can't make it in and they can mail in, if they're not physically able, then they still can have their say, which for some of our population that they just can't get out there. So I think this is a great way to try to engage them. So I support this.
Would you like to move first, second, and third reading of the bylaw?
Yes, please.
Seconder. Councillor Craddock, any further discussion? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Okay. We're now on to 11, Mayor's report. Couple activities and conversations to catch you up on from the last couple of weeks. Not in chronological order. Attended the presentation of our climate action plan. And I want to thank staff for the work they did putting on there. Councillor Antonelli was there as well. I thought, first of all, it was really nice to see. It's the first one I've attended since the pandemic. It's nice to see staff out there working in a public information session together. Just the whole energy and around the event was really nice to see. It was nice to see people come in and be able to go be face-to-face with us, face-to-face with staff, to talk about something that's important to them, to see staff interact with the public and ourselves. It was a really, I wasn't thinking that when I walked in, but I'm just, again, watching everybody interact. I thought, wow, it's really nice to be live and to be able to do this sort of presentation live. Staff did a great job presenting the climate action plan to the public, and there was a viewing of the movie Sam and Me. Afterwards, there was a panel discussion and some really great conversation, people asking, poking at questions at the climate action plan, asking questions about how they could support climate action work here in the community. We talked about specifics, whether it was transit or the funding required or the commitment required, but some really good, frank discussion. It wasn't pie in the sky. I think people recognize that our climate action plan represents some very ambitious goals, and it's, as we've talked about, going to require commitment from everybody, but they are doable. So there was a really good, frank conversation around that. So that was great. Maybe I'll go into this one. Similarly, we had a public information session for the Spelkumtum Community Forest. Unfortunately, this one was done electronically. We weren't able to pull this one together live, but hopefully the next one will be. I was in a bit of a noisy setting, so I wasn't able to sit on the panel, but I was able to stay on live and listen. I know Councillor Craddock was there, so I'll pass it over to you later to add your bits on it. But it was basically, just for those that you can still watch the recording, by the way. But it was the Clay and staff did a really good job talking about the upcoming cuts, some of the implications, the visuals, the processes around the upcoming cuts. They did a really good job talking about the forestry practices that are employed by our community forest, the environmental lens that's used for those forestry practices. There was good conversation around protection of old growth, revenues. So really good conversation, similar to the climate action plan, in that there was some really good, frank conversation, some great questions. And yeah, maybe I'll leave it at that. And you were in attendance as well. Anybody else that wants to add on to that one can do so. But I want to thank staff for putting that on. I think it's really important with that project as well that we stay transparent and people have access to the board to be able to understand what's going on, what the changes with the board are coming down the pipe, and how we go about our forestry practices at the community forest. Attended an SLRD meeting, a couple of the highlights there for Pemberton. One, we had a delegation, and I'm going to follow up. I got a direct email from Mr. Ole Olsen. He's the director of Vancouver Coastal North, manager CSky of the BC Emergency Health. So he runs the ambulance service, in other words, in the area. And there was a couple of people presenting, and it was good because we've had this conversation at this table talking about what the new staffing changes represents for service levels here in Pemberton. And I was able to probe a little deeper because there has been confusion, as we've talked about here. Does the new staffing structure bring more service, quicker response, better service to our Pemberton residents? And the short answer to that, I would say, after hearing the presentation, is yes. With the full-time staff here in town, especially at night, what it means is there is somebody on duty 24 hours. We're ready to have that service, as opposed to the on-call on the off hours that we used to have. So there was a couple of attendants nearby, but if you could think of the response time it would require the call gets placed, the call goes out to that individual at their home potentially. Middle of the night, you get changed, you get dressed, boom, you get to the attendant, you pick up the car, and then you're gone. So that whole part of the response time is being cut out. There is somebody that will be on duty pretty much 24 hours. And so our response time should improve. The other thing that our response time gets impacted by, and more during the day, and this is something we've talked about at this table as well, is when transfer cars go down to the city and then get sucked into the system there. So I was very specific in my questions about that. They have what's called a Juliet transfer car, which they want to try to keep up here as much as possible. And that car is the one that gets dispatched down to the city. And he explained that process a little bit better to me, but what I pushed a little harder on is I said, but there's still no guarantee that Juliet car does not get sucked into the system down there and sent on other calls on the lower mainland. There's nothing preventing that. And I said, is there a way that we can, and I know that the thing is they want to be nimble. They want to be flexible as a service to go, oh my God, we have an emergency down here. Car just came from Pemberton. We need it. We're going to use it. And I get that. They want to deploy their assets as best as wherever they need them. I was trying to ask for more of a guarantee to say that a car goes down with a patient, it comes right back. I was trying to get that sort of in a contractual sort of form. And I don't think there's quite a willingness to go that far. But there was a strong support I felt from them to continue work towards keeping that from happening wherever possible. I've had a follow-up email from Mr. Olson, and I will have a follow-up meeting with him, but I did probe a lot more into that. We want to protect our surge unit and protect our Juliet car, and so working with Mr. Olson and staff, hopefully we can get there. But all in all, with the changes that we've seen recently here, it's a plus for our community, and our response time is better and our presence is better with the ambulance, so that's positive. One of the big items that came up on the board meeting was in regards to a new development. This is an application, well, I mentioned it before, but it's come up now for first reading to go to public hearing, and this is the development by or application by Liwat Capital Assets, and this is the mixed residential village type mixed residential commercial development on in Mount Currie, just across from the White Church. So there's two fee simple properties that were brought together. They're looking at a development of 2 buildings, commercial downstairs, 1 to 2 stories of residential above. The south building would have 36 units of affordable non-market housing. And the north building would have 17 moderate income affordable rental units. The affordable non-market rental units would be supported by BC Housing. This is being managed by Liwa Nation. Within the application, there was, site development details like landscaping, a children's play area, community gardens. Parking would be developed on the surface. There would be allowance for electrical vehicles, bicycle parking, and they're trying to create within that corner a sense of arrival, I guess you'd say, and create some good pedestrian connectivity to Tizil, the Learning Center, and the Liwat Cultural Center across the highway. So we want to connect all that into a bit of a village, sort of, again, sense of arrival in that area. There was discussion from the board about stormwater management, and how that's getting dealt with, in that a request for some comments from the Diking District on that. And in terms of the pedestrian connectivity, I asked if there was still consideration to connect the Friendship Trail right up to this development. It seems like it would be a good ending spot for that. So I'm hopeful that can be incorporated. But that area is zoned pretty much commercial. So to go ahead with this application, it's going to require rezoning and an OCP amendment for the residential component. And so this has gone through first reading to go to public hearing. So our next step on this project or on this application would be go to public hearing with the information that was presented. So that's pretty big development for the area, and some affordable housing, much needed affordable housing within that. The AAC wildfire protection development permit area was given a second reading, and also going to public hearing. And sorry, I misspoke. The Liwat Main Street development is going to second hearing in public, second reading in public hearing, not first. What else in that meeting? Director Mack put some funds forward. Let's see if I can find it here. Director Mack put some funds forward for some water trailers for some of the more remote areas of Area C for wildfire protection. That was approved. And I think that was the bulk of the SLRD meeting. The Pemberton highlights. Attended the Pemberton Valley Emergency Management Committee meeting. There was an update from the PVDD, much of which Councillor Gadek has reported on. And I think, did you report on the North Arm rebuild last time?
Yeah, and I've got maybe an update on that.
Okay, I'll leave that to you then. From the other members of the committee, Liwat reported on the pull yard progress. That project is well underway now. They're ready to go, and they're hopeful to get it that dike built and set for any high water that's coming our way later in the summer. They have made a small change and requested some more funding, and are working with CN Rail to tie in the, I would say it would be the northeast side of the dike to the natural high ground on CN Rail. So if you can picture as it gets closer to the train tracks, they want to connect along there to that natural high ground. That represents a bit of an extension of the dike. And they're working with CN on that, but yeah, they're anxious to get going on that one. If you recall, I don't know if she presented here, I just reported on it, but Mr. Bicchetti and Ms. Woodruff reported on our project to do some replanting on the Capricorn slide site from Meager. I don't know if you guys recall that. Anyway, that grant application was unsuccessful, unfortunately. We will look or within the current budgets and the diking budget to see if there's any funds to do some small patches of that replanting work along the Capricorn slide and if there's any opportunity to reapply. But the current application was turned down. That's Diking District. And the regional district, their report at the meeting was to talk about, we had a conversation around natural asset management and how we can move towards that a little bit further, and the importance of building a natural asset roadmap. There is some funding available that's going to be looked at for that. But just as we move forward, how we can accomplish a roadmap to our natural assets, how they tie together, how they can be better used, better protected. So that's something we're going to discuss further as a group. And I failed to mention, actually, in the SLRD meeting, there was some funding allocated through grants to do asset management work as well across the regional district. Hard infrastructure, not the natural assets that I just referred to. Couple other things. I had a conversation with some members of the Arts Council. They're having their AGM this Thursday. One of the initiatives, and I believe I mentioned this to you guys last time, is a mural project that they're doing. They would like to start painting some of the murals around town. So the first one, maybe I think it was at our previous meeting. Do you remember which one the mural was that was selected for the first one?
Is it the
Is it by the train station?
No, I think it's the health center.
The health center one?
The health
So
center.
one mural has been chosen, unfortunately, I apologize, I've forgotten which one it was, but one mural has been chosen for the first mural in this program of introducing some artwork on murals around town. So
I think
health
it's
center,
that-
is that ring a bell? Was that
I think it's
so,
the
yeah.
back end of the health center,
Yeah.
the garage. Yeah.
So that's gonna go on. All that to say, I spoke with some of the members, and they would like somebody from the Village of Pembroke Council to sit on the selection jury of this. So there's one mural been chosen. Artists are putting in applications to paint that mural. There's a selection jury made up of a number of different members of the community, artists and otherwise. And they were hopeful that somebody from council would want to sit on it. The idea is, I believe the idea is to have the selection done. It's not a long thing, I think by the end of May. So it'll be probably a couple quick meetings to discuss it. So I'm circling back. I'll be going to their AGM on Thursday. So would anybody like to sit on that selection jury?
I'd
Councillor
love
Noble?
to.
Okay, do we get a motion to that effect? Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Antonelli, that Councillor Noble be appointed to the selection jury, Arts Council mural program. Any opposed? Motion carries. And like I said, so I'll pass that on, Leah, but if you're around on Thursday night, that it's their AGM as well. Coming up also, LMLGA. I'll be representing the Village of Pemberton at that convention in a week and a half, or whenever that is. And our resolutions. And ending on a good note, everybody at this table knows, but for the public, and we want to be able to celebrate good news. So 2 grant applications, as we know, that have been we've been successful on in the recent past year. The first is for the public's awareness, is to build our park and ride. I think that was just shy of $1.9 million. And that's to build a park and ride next to the elementary school. That's 50 spaces, charging stations, bike lockups, change rooms. It's a multimodal. It's a park and ride, but it's more than that. It's to hopefully allow people, connect active transportation to the transit hub as well. And I think it takes us one step into the future, and it's definitely something that that goes a long way towards our climate action goals. So very excited about that. We'll be going RFP to that when we can. And the second very exciting grant application news is that our childcare grant for new childcare spaces was approved. We have done 3 applications, I think, for this grant. Several visits to the minister's office. I think she'll be happy not to have me back. Maybe not, maybe she.
No, she likes you.
Yeah. Lots of work from staff to tweak the application, to work with the province to try to get these funds. As we know, we were outside the criteria for funding per space. Staff did a great job making the case for development costs here in our region. Spent a lot of time advocating for all of this, as we all did. So we were successful. We got 50 new spots coming. That more than doubles our kind of more than doubles our capacity. It's still, it just brings us to just above the provincial average now at 18.4, 18.7 or something spaces. So that shows how desperately behind we were, but the good news is this brings it up a long way, but we still have to continue working as our community grows. Childcare needs are not going to go away. So this is one great step, but I think we need to keep working at a policy level, at a support level, and however else to keep looking for other opportunities for childcare spaces. And in the meantime, I look forward to Village working with the Childcare Society and other employment groups to look at how we can develop this site, how we can make sure that we're building employment opportunities and training opportunities while this site's getting developed, so we're ready to go when it gets open. So yeah.
Did you want to give the amount of that grant?
That grant is for 2.71 million, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, really good news. Lots of hard work went into it, and super excited. This is both great stuff for our community, both goals that are on our top of our strategic priorities. And so yeah, it's really
Fantastic. That's great news.
And that's my report. Council reports.
Thanks, Mayor. And I have a number of them today. Tourism Pemberton. First of all, I want to say thank you to our acting CEO, Ms. Fraser, and staff. At the last meeting, I brought forward that Tourism Pemberton was proposing putting I'll call it an outhouse at the bottom of Mackenzie Basin where the parking lot is. And have been advised by Ms. Fraser that has been approved by staff. And I think they're just going out to decide where it's going to be located on site. So the Tourism Pemberton is very pleased about that. And between themselves and Orca, they're going to arrange how they're going to be maintaining it. So I think that's good news for not just the bikers, but the hikers and everybody in that area. So I'm pleased about that. Tourism Pemberton right now has a very healthy bank balance of about 160,000. They have 18 members and 4 comps. There was a couple of issues they had from the last meeting regarding snow clearing and also about taglines, which I brought forward to Ms. Fraser that she'll be answering those and getting back to them. One she's already done, so that's much appreciated. They talked about the powwow arbor that's going to be built out on the First Nations site. They brought up that they have everything now donated. They got 9 loads of logs. They've had concrete and gravel donated, and the Timber Framers Guild, who built our barn, is donating $260,000 towards labor costs. So they're really excited about that. It's going to be neat to have those people back in town. Maybe there'll be some staying at my place that stayed last time. So I'm looking forward to that. The other item that they want to bring up, and it's more through the chamber than Tourism Pemberton, but it works together. The septic system is now going to be open up at the info center. So I think that's good news for that. The other thing that was brought forward, Mark Mendonca is going to be the MC for Shirley Henry's Celebration of Life, and that date has now been set for June 11th. People want to put that on their calendar so the public is aware of that. The second meeting, as the mayor said, that I took part in was this Stelcoomton. I hope I said that correct. Community Forest. I think Clay Tyndall and Abe Litz both did an excellent job, not only with the presentation, but answering questions after. And I'm just going to run through quickly some of the points that came up. First of all, our allowable annual cut is 11,000 cubic meters. Some of the information that they answered from questions from the public is regarding old growth harvesting, how much there may be on the site and what that looked like, and how ecologically that was important to still do some. Both Clay and Abe said that they will take tours anytime, pretty much anytime that people want to go to the site unless they're actually harvesting. So get a hold of them. They would be happy to set that up. And hopefully when people go out, it's not just individuals, which take up a lot of time, but maybe they get 3 or 4 or 5 people together at the same time. So I think that's great. Another issue that came up is the brush piles that are left over at the end of harvesting. And it was said at that time that people are welcome to go out and cut some firewood from the existing brush piles if necessary. And they're working on getting rid of those at the end of the day, because right now burning is the only way that they can get rid of them. The First Nations is completely in favor of that because it regenerates the forest and it also helps get rid of that brush from being a fire problem going forward. The other thing that was talked about is one of the things that the community forest is really pushing is utilizing the timber, first of all, in town. So anybody that has projects or companies that want to get started or move forward, our first thought would be to have that go locally. And obviously it would save money in transportation costs, because for the community forest, one of the biggest costs that we have is transporting it from here down to Squamish. And some of the logs are going into the pole yard, so it's good. The other thing that they're looking at is their first option is local purchasing when they're doing things, and employment when they can. Obviously, for contractors, we can't specify it so much, but they certainly ask contractors to be vigilant about trying to get local people working. And I think he wrapped up by saying viewscape is really important to the community forest. Retention of some trees on the site. He talked about single-use trees and cluster trees, trying to keep those in there for retention of the site and stuff. He talked about tourism, ecological, historical protection. And they had a lot of conversations and input from the trails and the Wildlife Association locally to look at the deer population, but also trails and how we can promote that going forward. And along with that, he showed some pictures of roads that were built into the forestry sites and then decommissioned. And actually the decommissioned one, we came out, you couldn't tell the difference from just a normal harvest area. It was really quite nice to see. So. Then I attended the Pembina Valley Diking District meeting, and they've completed removal of 54,000 cubic meters on the Voyager Bar at Lillooet River. So if you're going out that way, I've never seen such a large pile of material piled up alongside the dike. It's just, it's huge, but it's good to have it done. They're also getting funding for, they want to do a drone survey. So what they want to do with the drone survey of the rivers is so they can record overall growth. Because right now they're doing it by river. This way with the drone, they're hoping to see the buildup and how it changes over year. They found that not this year, but last year, they took some material out of the river. I think it was 32,000 cubic meters. And after that small flood event we had, it was more than filled in again. So trying to keep up to the river, like it's always been said, this is a multi-decade situation, multi-million-dollar cost, and the government, provincial government, hasn't come to the table for that full amount, so it makes it pretty hard. The mayor brought up about North Arm Channel, and what they're putting in place right at the present time is a real-time level monitoring device. So that'll be really good, and they're also looking at increasing the size of that culvert that's going through there. They've also are looking at purchasing this year an emergency pump. They're looking at costing and planning for future high water events. and where they're going to place that. They talked about someplace, maybe Arm Canal over by the two residential sites in that area. Right at the present time, they're writing and planning and putting a contract together for the Pemberton Creek, and they hope to have that in place so that it'll be carried out in August, September, and I think that's to do with the fish window. They're doing a survey of the Arm Canal, again, of Pemberton, so they can keep that. And that's going to be a lot around where the lodge is, Pemberton Valley Lodge, because a lot of that land in there is actually in the Daking District area. And they want to widen that out in that area, because what they're finding with the new culverts in there, it's moving the water, but they would like to expand the width of that area behind the lodge so that they could take up more of the overflow rather than going over to the other side. So that's in place, and they're looking at that. They mentioned, and this is interesting, the freshet is about 2 to 3 weeks late this year over the normal years. So I guess with that in mind, that's just the way the cool weather has been and stuff. So they're expecting sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that depends on the weather, because sometimes our nights are still pretty chilly. So I'm not sure. The other thing that was announced, their annually general meeting will be July 14th. There's 2 positions of directors coming up. Bruce Ronan, I hope I pronounced that properly, term expires, but he has said that he will run again. Miss Brenda McLeod, who's been on the board as long as I can remember, and was chair for a lot of years, and done a tremendous job for the Daking District, has said that she will not be running this next time. So there will be 2 positions up and one that will not see the incumbent run for that. So next page is blank, Mayor. So I think I'm done. Thank you very much.
Just a note on the North Arm Channel. In 2003, when we had the flooding that affected that part of the valley, that it's the corner on the North Arm Channel that blew out. That's where they've just done that reinforcement work, and the monitoring that Councillor Craddock mentioned is taking place. But they've it was sort of temporarily patched, we'll call it, after that, and after a bunch of work now that corner has been shored up. So that was a weakness in our system. So that was good news to clear that up. And sorry, I along those lines, I also had a ministers' conference meeting, or teleconference with Ministers Cullen and with ENBC and the mayors from the Southwest and the Lower Mainland. And not much to report on there. I didn't learn a ton. It was very interesting to hear other communities, how they're dealing with wildfire protection, how they're dealing with flood mitigation. Everybody's doing a lot of work and everybody's looking for funds. So there's some interesting conversation. I took the opportunity and this came to mind as I was listening to the PBDD update. I just took the opportunity to lay out once again our challenges with the Lillooet River and the sediment development that happens every year, from the meager slide and how that kind of presents a unique challenge to our community on top of climate change and everything else, and that we were looking for support and funding from the province and from Flynn Rowe and from ENBC. So anytime I have an opportunity, I'll take it, and I threw that out there and see what that's worth. And another upcoming event I'm sorry I didn't mention is, I think it's the second week of May. I think it's called the 5 of the 7 Nations Powwow. Liwat is hosting it this year. They rotate hosting duties, and it's here locally. Liwat's hosting it this year. So that's they always do their long weekend powwow on the May long weekend with the rodeo. And this is another one that'll be really exciting for the community, for Liwat Nation to have, to be able to host that, and lots of visitors. And so I would encourage people to attend if possible. Sorry to jump back in. Other council reports. Anyone?
I just had a comment about the community forest. One of the questions that I asked was whether Pemberton youth are going to have an opportunity to go on the field trips to the cut blocks and join the tree planting crews and whatnot. The answer I got was that yes, it's available to them if they would like that, which I think is great. But I think if we wait for Pemberton youth to try and engage and make that opportunity, it's not going to happen. And so I would like to see the community forest board and the new director and the new members. Yeah, I would like to see that forwarded by them, so that we make sure that it happens.
We can bring that forward. We have a meeting next week, I
We have a
believe.
meeting on Monday and I'll
Yeah.
follow up with Clay on that as well.
Yeah, we'll make sure that gets discussed.
We have a meeting on Monday.
I think it's Monday.
I haven't received anything.
We'll make sure that the invitations are sent.
I'm out of town, so it's too bad.
All right, anyone else? Counselor Zan, go ahead.
Yeah, I attended the library meeting a couple weeks ago. They're very happy about the face coverings being lifted, just their attendance is going to skyrocket since that happened. So they're accepting more visitors back. They're increasing the programming to include knitting, wellness, kind of series, and community book club. So they're doing more and more things to bring the people back together in a safe place. They wanted to also extend their thanks to the mayor and council for their support with their budget that was approved at the SRD meeting I attended. They wanted to say thank you very much for everybody's support here for that. I attended the grad fundraiser dinner and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to see a lot of teenagers running around, having a good time, lots of laughs, and enjoying the public. So yeah, it was great. I don't know how they did. I don't know what their final numbers were, but there was a lot of people that were there for the dinner. So I hope they met their goal, whatever that was. Seems like they're having a lot of fun. So that's all the point of it. It's my council report.
Yeah, they were just shy of 2,000, I believe. There's still some money coming in.
Nice.
But there's just shy of 2,000, which was pretty much their goal. I think that takes them to where they need to be for their prom.
Awesome. That's good news. Yeah, there was a lot of people that was coming for that, and it was good to see the support from the community for the grads. So.
Yeah. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councilor Noble.
I was going to flag a couple great upcoming events, but Mike kind of covered it in his second mayor's report. The Statloom Gathering, which is Make a Comeback on May 8th, 9th, and 10th. I believe it's going to be held at Ulush, but I don't know if they've confirmed the exact location yet. And then the Lilwat Nation Rodeo, which will be the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. It's going to be awesome to see these events coming back.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Okay, we're on to correspondence for action. Oh, we can get it done. So correspondence for action, the first one is from Ms. Chasen regarding reiterating concerns regarding lack of affordable housing in Pemberton. I know that staff has responded to that letter with some information. Maybe I'll see if there's any more information that we can provide. And I don't know if Ms. Chesson is on right now or not, but I know, no. Nonetheless, I know that she felt that we kind of breezed over her letter on the last time, and I want to apologize for that because that certainly wasn't the intention. And it's certainly not because council does not appreciate the importance of the affordable housing challenges that we have in our community right now. I think the reaction last time at the end of the day was just to have staff respond to the letter writer to say why the specific proposal couldn't work within our legislation or our taxation abilities. And so I know staff has followed up and might have some more comments, but I just wanted to, I was hopeful that Ms. Chasen might be on, but yeah, just in general, we certainly didn't gloss over this item. We certainly recognize the importance of it. And, on today's agenda alone, there's the housing needs assessment update. At our committee of the whole later this afternoon, we're going to be looking at fees to remove further barriers to building affordable housing. We've looked at that from a zoning perspective. We're working hard on other projects to fill gaps within our housing spectrum, be it working with developers or projects and partnerships. So I just wanted to say how, it's one of our top strategic priorities, how important the housing challenges and affordability issues are in our community is to this council. And we certainly don't gloss right over that. And I'm happy to, I'm sure any of us are happy to speak with Ms. Chasen if there's more questions on that. Did staff have some more in terms of the reply from
Oh,
staff?
no, we did provide a response and Ms. Chazon did respond, thanking the village very much for the correspondence and explaining some of the more details, and indicated that she's got a better understanding of how the process works now. I did share that with all of council. So yeah, we did ask if she wanted to continue to have her letter, and she was happy to have it be on the agenda again.
So we satisfy her queries, or should there be an action item to respond?
I think we could follow up and we can certainly tell her about some of the outcomes of today's meeting if council wants to. Yeah, the work that's being done and especially with this grant application that we're making, and it all feeds in. So I'm happy to have staff follow up.
Okay, so can I get a motion to have staff respond in that? Councillor Noble, second by Councillor Antonelli, discussion?
Yeah, just wanted to say that I did reach out to Ms. Chazon. We had about a 20-minute conversation. And some of the concerns that she put in this letter, I addressed with her. Certainly talking about reduced property taxes and mill rate and how it's in the community charter, and we don't have an availability to change that, so she understood that. We talked about the short-term Airbnb situation and how many licenses were presently in town, and how council had reduced that a number of years ago to limit the amount in the community. And we also talked around about the rent cap and the ability of council to be able to do those type of things. So I think at the end of the conversation, I felt that she was very much a good listener, and she heard what I was bringing forward. So I think she felt pretty good that between staff and myself would answered questions. But the positive thing about it, they have found new rental housing in town and won't have to leave the community. So I think that was good news to that. So yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next one up is Worcester resident requesting that the village find solutions to end the transit strike.
Don't we wish?
Don't we wish? And then I've had a number of conversations with the mayors of Squamish and Whistler, and we all share the frustrations. We also share the frustration that throughout the pandemic, transit was deemed an essential service and needed to keep running through the pandemic as per the province's instructions. But we're not seeing a lot of support to keep transit running right now. So where's the essential service now is sort of the question that we've kind of come up with, going, what the heck? But yeah, there's a lot of frustration. I don't know what else we can do as a local government at this point. Yeah, if there's any thoughts on this letter, or how would you go ahead?
Well, so I did speak with Ms. Yoshihira, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and I think you've pretty much adequately answered her questions. That's pretty much what I told her. Is I honestly don't know what municipal council can do. But that we definitely have had some voices saying that we'd like to see this, the strike end as much as you would. So, the staff response with basically what you've quoted here.
So a motion to have staff respond with what we are able to do in this event and what we're not able to do, so to speak.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councilor second by Councilor Noble. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 3 is from a Monte Vale Strata resident expressing concerns over parking and flood mitigation issues with respect to the affordable housing development proposed for Harrow Road. Also number 4 is a letter regarding concerns over the affordable housing project on Harrow Road. What we've done up to date, look for a motion unless there's another idea, is to have staff respond to the letter writer saying that all of their issues will be addressed as the application is brought forward to council, and explaining the process, the decision-making process around it. Somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Zant, second by Councillor Antonelli. Any discussion? Opposed? Motion carried. So that covers 3 and 4. We have 3 correspondence for information. Would anybody like to point any out?
Move to receive and file.
Seconder, Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Decision on late business. Late business, we have none. Notice of motion. Question period. So the regular council meeting is now open for questions from the public. Please be reminded that only questions directly related to items discussed during this meeting are permitted. If any members of the public attending via Zoom wish to ask a question, please click the raise hand feature in the webinar controls. This will notify staff that you'd like to ask a question, and they will unmute your microphone when it's your turn to speak. Ms. Kennedy.
We have no questions from the Zoom participants.
Right. Questions from the gallery? With that, then we will look for a motion to go on camera. Second, Councillor Caddick, second by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Perfect. Let's take a little break.
I'll get there eventually.
Okay, I'm going to call to order this committee of the whole number 228 for Tuesday, April 26th. And in honor of the Liwat-Tool, the village of Pemberton acknowledges that we are grateful to be meeting within the unceded territory of the Liwat Nation. Any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, motion to approve is presented. Councillor Caddick, second by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of minutes from committee of the whole 227, Tuesday, April 5th, moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Caddick. Any discussion? Opposed? Motion carries. Electronic meetings review.
That's,
It's you, right?
yeah.
Just trying to make a statement by having trouble with their electronic.
Change my name. Okay,
Take your time.
so thank you once again for hearing the report. And the purpose of this report is to present you a review of electronic meetings and hybrid meetings as they have happened over the last 6 months. At regular council meeting number 1545 on September 21st, 2021, council directed staff to prepare a bylaw that would permit council committee meetings to be held by electronic means, and directed staff to bring the bylaw back for review 6 months after adoption. So 6 months ago, on October 21st, council adopted the council procedure amendment bylaw number 909 that established that councillors may attend any number of meetings by electronic means, and that a meeting may be held exclusively by electronic means, provided the mayor deems it advisable or it's necessitated by health, safety, or environmental emergency or urgent village business. So in the 6 months following adoption of the bylaw, there was a resurgence of COVID-19 and most meetings were held exclusively by electronic means. And during this time, council chambers was outfitted with a new camera, an additional wall-mounted monitor, speakers and microphones, and the new system was used in its entirety for the first time at the April 5th meetings. So council and staff haven't had a full opportunity to assess either the hybrid meeting system or the use of the bylaw. And we're suggesting deferring the plan review of the bylaw and discussion of electronic meetings policy until we've had a better opportunity to work with the new system and to determine if there are any gaps in the bylaw that might need to be addressed by an amendment or by a policy. So if the committee is agreeable to this suggestion, staff would bring back a draft policy for review and discussion at a committee of the whole meeting to be held late in the summer or early fall. And this concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
I just have a question of Leah. So are you hearing us okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. It seems to be working well. So we've had two meetings now. I, for one, am just in favor of allowing people to come in the office or stay on electronic as they please, as it suits them, without having it being tracked or monitored or numbered, because this is, I think, the way of the future. I think that I'm just in support of amending the bylaw now to just say, let's go with this, and we can always change it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, and I agree with that somewhat, but then just recently we talked about staff not coming in and interacting with each other. I did see one or more people take up electronic attendance as the only way of being part of the council, but that would be my only concern with that. And that could happen. I mean, we may get someone in the future that just decides, I don't want to go downtown. And I don't think that's makes for good harmony within the group.
Mhm.
So I like the procedure, but I would hate to see something happen, like I say, that we don't have that interaction.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. I mean, I think it has worked well so far. I think, he's able to engage in the conversation, and it's a good example. I think it's worked so far. My concern, and one of the reasons I was happy to bring this back now and maybe again, is for the same or similar concerns, Councillor Craddock, in that the interaction between council, I think, is very important too, in terms of how we work together. I find we are more productive and more effective now that we are back live together than we were a few months ago. Not to say we didn't do good work and we couldn't make it work when we were all electronic, but I definitely feel being in the same room. I find it a lot easier as the chair. I was always struggling with your delay on the camera and this or that, you know what I mean? I find this a lot easier in terms of reading the room, trying to chair it. So I think as much as possible, we should be live. I think it's important for council dynamics so that we work well together. And I think it's also really important for the public that they're able to come in here, even in this situation. Like, it's not ideal with our room setup, but it works. And either be able to ask questions or see and hear live what councillors have to say. I think it's a little easy sometimes to hide behind our screen, and it's more transparent and honest and frank when we're sitting in a room in front of our constituents and our voters and our residents to make certain comments or to be able to respond to certain concerns. I don't think anybody on this council, I have no concerns about anybody misusing this policy on this council, but we're setting a policy that moves forward. And I worry that somebody could take advantage and, like Ted said, just decide they don't want to come in because they can make their own lunch and their own tea or whatever it is, or hide a little bit better. So I think it's working great. I think we're doing fine. I want to make sure, though, that our policy does consider those concerns that I've laid out, and that it's something that gets checked up on to make sure it's not being abused, basically. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's meant me, and I don't think we've had a really good chance to work on it because we've only had a couple of meetings because of Omicron. And, when we decided this, we got hit with the 5th wave and things changed again. So I don't know that we've had a really good testing period. I'm happy to just leave it as is for now and bring it back for another discussion as Gwendolyn suggested with the report. But I do want to make sure either this and or the next council has a good look at this policy to decide whether we're best serving the public in that way. So I'd be happy to see this come back with a policy suggestion from staff that could be looked at later in the summer.
So take a bit of time and then we develop a policy and bring a proposed policy forward in draft form for council to sort of
Bring it
workshop.
back to a committee of the whole, I guess. or-
Yeah, but give us a few more months.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
And then build the policy, present the draft policy for council's consideration to workshop.
See where we're at that point, whether we're comfortable making that decision in this council or whether we want to just leave the framework for the next council or however we decide at that point. Go ahead, Councilor Noble.
Yeah, I think it's a super valuable tool. I think it kind of was demonstrated today when we had an employee with COVID who was able to still perform his duties. And myself, I've got a head cold, which I'm almost over, but I'm still able to do my job without spreading this around to y'all and the public. So I think it is important that we keep this tool available.
Yeah.
But it's definitely preferable to all be in the same room because it does take a long time for people to look up sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So is council comfortable with having a draft policy come back to a committee of the whole to review later in the summer, something like that?
Yep, I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Craddock. So recommendation to council to direct staff to,
Prepare a draft policy.
It's coming in.
That's Councilor Zan.
what did I say?
Craddock.
Moved by Councillor Zan, seconded by Councillor Zan.
Sure. Council's second, yeah.
It's been a long day.
I didn't even notice. Is that why you said the Greg comment? Right over my head, right? Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Gwendolyn. fees waiver policy for eligible developments. We're gonna wait for Scott to join us.
What a day to be away sick.
So yeah,
Have to be here 3 times.
Do I have to bring him in?
I got him.
Pardon?
I got him.
You brought him in?
Gwendolyn jumped behind the steering wheel. At the red light, she jumped into the driver's seat.
It's probably best.
Scott, welcome back. And you're all set. We're ready to hear about the fees waiver policy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. All right, so the purpose of this report is to seek input from Committee of the Whole on a fee waiver policy for eligible developments. So this policy is intended to establish eligibility criteria and provide a bit of a procedure for village staff to follow when a proponent of an eligible development requests a fee waiver. So as you will recall, earlier in the year, the village amended the fees and charges bylaw number 905/2021 to permit council to by resolution waive, reduce, or refund development application, building, and service connection fees for eligible developments. And so that amendment provided some high level conditions, but a policy is needed to answer some of the more specific questions. The policy is still fairly high level. It won't be until a specific application is in front of council that a lot of the more specific questions will come up. I hope this report will kind of make that clear as we move through the policy. So part of the background of this is the village's previous work on affordable housing with the 2019 Age-Friendly Affordable Housing Action Plan. One of the methods highlighted in that plan was to use clear, consistently applied policies to express the village's commitment to affordable housing. And so one of the action statements in that was to consider measures to support and incentivize purpose-built rental housing. So this policy will allow council to incentivize affordable housing by waiving some of the fees and charges that would normally be due as part of the development process. So I'll jump right into the, actually the one important detail before I move on is that this policy does not apply to the development cost charges, the DCCs. That the DCC bylaw will be amended separately to allow for exemptions for affordable housing projects. So jumping right into the eligibility, quick discussion on the eligibility criteria. The principal applicant for this kind of, or for a fee waiver will be a not-for-profit. So we're envisioning mostly affordable housing proposed by not-for-profits. But while drafting this policy, it became clear that we should broaden the eligibility criteria to include projects that will end up providing services to the community. For example, a not-for-profit food bank renovation being undertaken by a not-for-profit. There is also to give council the fullest capabilities. There is also a clause to allow for-profit developments to be eligible, but the eligibility requirements are stricter for-profit organizations. In essence, they will be required to have a housing agreement in place. And due to the nature of a housing agreement, it's not going to be in place until towards the end of a development process. So we envision all for-profit developments who wish to be considered for a fee waiver, that they would have to pay the fees up front, and then it would be more of a refund situation should council consider that the project is deserving and needs to be incentivized. I'll just quickly touch on the procedure that we've drafted as part of this policy. It's fairly straightforward. We keep in mind that as council or as staff are processing a request for fee waiver, we will have already received a full application for what the proponent is requesting. So we will have a lot of information on file already. So on top of that, we are requesting that each application would include a detailed rationale letter, which really just dives into the details of the fee waiver, in particular, what they would like council to consider as part of the fee waiver process. And, you know, talking about some of the benefits and their project is bringing to the community, and that sort of thing. When relevant, mainly for not-for-profit projects, we'll be looking to receive a copy of financial statements for the last 3 years. A clause like this would not apply to a for-profit developer. There are a couple of other clauses which I won't dive into, but happy to answer questions on if anyone's curious. We'll review that application, and as part of that, the finance department will be deeply involved. We'll provide all the relevant numbers to the finance department, and the finance department will help kind of draft what we're calling, I think I called it a budget impact assessment or something of that nature. Essentially, it'll a breakdown for council to really understand the financial implications of the fee waiver, and potentially a little bit of a breakdown in terms of different choices that council could make. For example, if they wanted to compare a 50% fee waiver to a 100% fee waiver, those kind of things. Once all that information had been gathered and put together, we would provide a report to council, and we would put the decision before council.
So Scott, to be clear on that note, since you paused there, to be clear on that note, even if we develop this policy and an applicant checks all the boxes during staff review, it's no matter what, it still comes to council.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. The decision, it will always be council's to decide to make a decision or to grant a fee waiver or refund.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that summarizes my report, so I'm open to any questions.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Just one question I have. Would you be able to eventually break it down to a per door cost? So that, let's say it was $2,000, it'd make it easier for us if it's a 40 unit, we know what it's going to cost the community. Is that possible to reduce it down that much if it's a full waiver?
Absolutely. That's really that's a simple mathematical exercise. So we can easily frame the information in that lens if that is helpful for council to consider the fee waiver.
For me, that would be nice, because going forward, then it'd be pretty easy to figure out when somebody comes forward with a project. Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
Yeah, I'm not really in favor of waiving the fees for for-profit organizations. I think the fees that we charge barely cover our services. So if we waive those fees, you're asking the ratepayers to subsidize a for-profit business. So I appreciate that affordable housing element, but I think it's pretty tricky to make a developer commit to something that's truly affordable, because we've heard in the past that housing with housing agreements, the banks don't want to finance that. So I don't really agree with that clause 3B, because I don't think we should be subsidizing developers. But on the other hand, I think the requirement for the housing agreement makes that 3B hardly applicable to anybody. So, you know, I'm okay moving forward with it. But to be clear, if this came to council and it was for an apartment building with, you know, moderate rent, but not truly affordable rent, I can't see subsidizing that when you know that they're making a profit off it still, right?
Is the for-profit component to cover, so the example that Councilor Antonelli just gave, if somebody came forward with a building and said, you know, a building 20 units for profit and 10 which are affordable, not for profit or below market or something along those lines, is this fee waiver would be just the fees associated with those 10 units?
A good question. The way the policy is written is kind of to have the broadest funnel possible so that it can be applied to all of the projects described. Just quickly, I want to go back and touch on a comment that Councillor Antonelli made. I think you're hitting the nail on the head of this whole topic of discussion. It's going to be a very difficult decision for council to make when considering fee waivers for any kind of project, but especially for a for-profit housing project. So to come a little bit more to kind of try to answer both questions in the same vein. Essentially, we wanted to draft this policy in a way that it would cover all possible cases, but essentially there are steps in the procedure that will allow staff to be very clear with applicants about what council's communicated direction has been on incentivizing affordable housing. So that, for example, in the case that Mayor Richmond raised, a proposal that came in with a small number of affordable housing and wished to have all their fees waived could be, essentially told that the village is not interested in incentivizing this project based on the fundamentals of the project. So I hope I'm answering your question well.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I think it's a tough one because I agree with the concerns. I don't want to fund or provide financial breaks for-profit developers on the backs of the taxpayers when they are going out to market and making money on it. I also want to make sure, there's only so many public or not-for-profit affordable housing projects we're going to be able to be part of. So I think it's important that we remove barriers and incentivize for private developers to try to provide affordable housing as well. So just trying to find that balance, and that's why I asked my first question: did they all come to council ultimately, so we can sort of break these out a little bit? And got you. So we can break these out a little bit and have a good conversation around them. Because I don't want to eliminate the ability to waive fees for a private developer or a for-profit developer who's going to provide perhaps some really beneficial units. Those units should perhaps see a waiver of the fees. So yeah, just trying to find a place within this policy to sort of protect from both. Be able to remove some of those barriers and incentivize, because it's hard, right? You got private or not, you got for-profit developers who come in and go, I could just go build this and make money and get out and be done. Or, well, the village really wants some affordable housing. I think we have to incentivize it in some way. I think we have to make it attractive. Like we can't just wait for variances as our opportunity to get developers to provide some of these things. I think on any, if we can incentivize in any other way, it's really important. So I want to make sure the policy does allow for profit, but I don't want to subsidize, on the backs of the residents either. So.
I was just going to flag that under section 25 of the community charter, we're not able to aid a business. So that any request for a fee waiver would have to be looked at through that lens for a for-profit organization. So I think that's one of the elements that the for-profit organization has to bring to council in terms of their rationale and what commitments they're going to make and how long that will lay out, and it would be done through a housing agreement. It could be that somebody builds a facility for a nonprofit organization, and so then you would obviously be for-profit developer building for a nonprofit. Council would probably look at that a little bit differently too. So it's really about giving people the opportunity to make that application, and obviously staff's role is to bring forward as much information for council to feel comfortable in making that decision to waive fees or not.
Mm-hmm. That's well put. Yeah, and I would just add on top of that, it's more of a theoretical exercise at this point. And so we kind of are keeping that funnel wide open so that if you can imagine a for-profit developer coming into town, with a beautiful, I don't know, some really amazing affordable housing project that does need some sort of incentive to get off the ground. It would be nice to be able to, for council to be able to consider it too. So that's kind of, I guess, part of how this policy is framed.
I think maybe going forward, one thing we could maybe have a look at is I think every apartment building being built in town should be mandatory that a certain percentage of the units become affordable living. They do that in lots of communities right now, whether it's 10% or 20%. In Vancouver, it's 20% now, it's required. And they don't get it.
How can we legislate that, Mr. McCray? I mean, if somebody owns a property right now that ticks all the boxes within their zoning, we can't force them if they're not coming to us with a variance request. We can't require that they construct affordable housing within their development county, or if we can, how does that look like?
Yeah, we don't have any requirements per se in our bylaws, although we are subject to the Squamish Lillooet Regional District's regional growth strategy, which does call for a target of 15% of housing to be affordable. So we can use that as to our benefit.
As a target, but we can't require.
That's right.
Would we, if we changed our approach to business, would we be able to require, or is that something is that within our power or not?
I believe.
I think we'd have to look at it.
We could investigate it.
Through the rezoning, that's what I'm saying, though, in the absence of a rezoning or a variance, we don't have that tool. If you walk in and you own this property next door and you want to develop it for such, we can't require 10 or 15%. Only in the event of a rezoning or a variance request do we have that negotiation ability. And so, and unless there's another way. So I'm curious how they're doing in Vancouver. I don't know. They're on their own charter. Maybe they have different abilities, but I'd be curious how it's done, because that's my understanding.
It would be interesting to take a look at, because I know a developer there that they're required. I think it's 20% on every high-rise building is required.
I mean, this is something too that can be fleshed out through the OCP review, which is a great opportunity to have that conversation through our affordable housing needs assessment and then the OCP and see what tools we need to put in place.
And that's good. I think that's a good comment. I also think we're looking at this policy sooner than our OCP, and our OCP is going to take a couple of years, and we have development in our lap right now. So if we have, and it's, to me, when Ms. Pedrini brought the housing review to us, and we had some conversations around it. I remember having conversations about this, and it seemed to me that, as stated, only with variances or rezoning do we have that ability, unless we down zone or change zoning, which we know what that process could look like. We would have to look at a full change of zoning, which could result in a lot of different things. But I digress. Any other questions or thoughts on this? So at this point, you're looking for any further feedback? Have you got enough feedback? Do you need any motions to help you continue to develop this?
No, I think that is sufficient feedback at this time. I've taken some notes here.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time again this afternoon. I hope you feel better.
We can just get maybe a resolution that the committee receives a draft report and staff will bring it back to May 17th meeting for approval.
Sure.
Yeah, but just something, just said that the report we received and staff proceed with.
Seconded by Councilor Antonelli. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thanks again, Mr. McCray.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Well, we're on item 6, Canada Day 2022. Ms. Burns, back to the table.
All right. Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. It's really nice to be able to be here again. Thank you for welcoming me to seek your input on Canada Day 2022. As you may recall, 2021 saw very unique issues to consider in planning a Canada Day event. There was a special meeting, number 1541 on June 29th, where the discussion resulted in a change of the virtual activities that had been planned being referenced as Canada Day activities, and more just a come on out and do some activities with your family type sort of event. On November 2nd, at the Committee of the Whole meeting, number 220, programmers Angela Leggett and Maddie Hepner presented the committee with some ideas in the hopes to collaborate with Lillooet Nation to plan activities and events for Canada Day that would begin on National Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st and have activities through to July 1st through a grant with the National Heritage Grant Program. However, we were unsuccessful in receiving that grant application. So with it right around the corner, with public health orders having just been modified, and the ability to move forward with planning events and gatherings with lots of new things in consideration, we've done some research and consulted with our neighboring communities of Whistler, Squamish, and Sechelt in particular. Through that collaboration, I've also was put on to the Creative City Network of Canada and was able to participate in a national conversation in regards to how communities are moving forward with putting forth Canada Day. And that it was unanimous basically at that meeting nationally that communities are not moving forward with pre-pandemic type events for Canada Day. There's multiple reasons. So it's how to navigate new requirements, those new requirements being public health related for health and safety of staff and participants when you put on gatherings, events of those sizes. There was conversation around new programming ideas and trends. The truth and reconciliation piece being a very large thing that communities across the country are incorporating. And then out with the old, in with the new, and what might that look like? All of our neighboring communities are doing it much differently this year, and staff have considered creating a new celebration for July 1st, not one that highlights Canada Day as it's the form and the means for that programming, but we are suggesting we do something along the lines of Celebrate Pemberton, and we create an event that invites families to come and participate in activities and programs. That would include celebrating our community. We hope to include pieces of our First Nations history and the fact that we operate on First Nations land. And we go from there. So I'm kind of looking for your feedback, since this has definitely been a conversation brought to the council level in the last year, that we are moving forward in the right direction. The other thing to take into consideration is the fact that an event like this is something that we spend upwards of 8 to 10 months planning. The pre-pandemic type event that would have happened on Canada Day, planning would have started in October for that event. And obviously we're under a little bit of a time crunch because it's April 26th. And Canada Day is literally right here. And we at this time, unfortunately, have a not allocated budget for the event at this time either. However, staff is keen to do something. So I am open to your feedback.
Christine, you said you spoke to Western Squamish and they're not going traditional, but what are they doing? Do you know?
So Squamish, interestingly enough, the Squamish district doesn't actually do the planning of their major events. It is put out to their arts council, I believe. So I'm still playing tag there and haven't fully connected, but they know that they're not doing it traditionally. So they aren't doing, to my knowledge, they're not doing a parade. They're not doing traditional cake cutting type ceremonies. They're incorporating more. The one thing I did find that was super interesting is that here in Pemberton, we've been ahead of the curve in recognizing that we're on First Nations land with the blessing and the drum circle, because most other communities were like, we're going to include that this year. And I'm like, well, that's something that has always happened, that recognition. So there's going to be more of that included. Whistler is not doing a parade per se. Bob Andrea, the manager of Village Animation for the RMW, said he's referring to it as a reverse parade. So they're kind of working with the Squamish Lillooet Cultural Center to coordinate a walk through the village. They're going to be transitioning, I built like the tentative plan is to transition from staff being in the color red to represent Canada to being in orange in recognition of Every Child Matters, and things like that. Sea Shelt is doing, they have a reconciliation committee with their First Nations members in Sea Shelt. So that committee is coming up with what they will be celebrating. And they have actually, I do believe, have received the grant because they are doing an event in conjunction with their First Nations on June 21st. And they're doing an event on July 1st. And they're programming activities and programs in between the 2 days as well. It seems that has been a way that many communities have gone to, but the granting committee made it very clear that there had to be an event on both of those days or one of those days in order to be successful in receiving monies. So that's how they have received. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Is that grant funding available every year?
That is grant funding that has been applied for every year. But it has, their prerequisites have shifted.
So with a little bit more planning and further out with consultation, and there might be an opportunity next year to do something similar.
Yeah.
That Sea Shelt does.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I noticed who you've talked to, but I don't see you've talked to Lillooet Nation. And I brought it up at our collaborative meeting, and Maxine was quite interested in being involved somehow. And we talked about the orange shirt, about them doing the drumming again and making some stuff. So are we going to reach out to them to see if they want to be involved? Or
yes.
And the way I put it forward is it would be up to them to give us some input on what they would like to see.
Correct. I think that takes us into another level of conversation that I would need to be invited by, say, Chief to participate and their CAO and things like that. So those conversations I'm happy to pursue. I have reached out to Alphonse a few times, but he and I play very lengthy tag in our communication. So at this time, we would 100% be reaching out to Maxine to ensure that she is still interested in participating by doing the blessing and doing a drum circle. We've reached out to SLCC. They have obviously everyone transitioned during the pandemic with the programs and services that they offer. So what they do in-house crafts. I'm not sure if you've ever participated in one of their craft activities, and they do them in-house all the time, but they really do them with the school groups that visit. And I had the opportunity as a Girl Guide leader last year to do a virtual participation where all of our girls went to the SLCC separately, purchased the craft kit, and then Stephanie Burns has put how to create the craft in a virtual format. So the girls, we all did it virtually at home on our own and created a First Nations craft. So the goal would be to incorporate some crafts that are First Nations oriented through the SLCC. And what that also does is it supports their organization, which is suffered significantly through the pandemic with not seeing visitors and things like that through the facility. That helps fund them. So we'd be supporting our local nations as well through doing something like that. We've done some preliminary reach out to Carly Sindrick and Christine Cogger, who formerly ran the Spud Run on Canada Day. And they've given us permission to do something like that. So we would we're kind of thinking the day would look like a spud run in the morning. We've approached the Pemberton Canoe Association to see if they do something on the water at the same time for people who would be interested in doing something there. We'd offer free fitness classes at the facility, and then we would do something at the facility, say 11 to 1, that looked like we're hoping, we're hoping that the Menashed would step up and maybe facilitate some field games. So they'd be in charge of croquet and bocce and some things like that that we already have on hand. And we're hoping to reach out to Rotary and Lions about doing a barbecue still. And instead of a cake, maybe we can get cupcakes with our village brand colors on them instead of red and white. We do have red shirts that say crew on them still. So, but that's also one of the colors in our Village of Pemberton style guide as well. So it's multi-purpose, but these are all ways we can attempt to save some monies and do things on the low end. Have a bubble station, giant Jenga, and just do a bunch of things like that. So.
I got you, Leah. Just to follow up too, I've tried to reach out and get together with Chief Ashley and Chief Dean, and that hasn't, we're still trying to, but that hasn't happened. And we were also hopeful to have some of this conversation at New Pointe, which has gotten moved from March to April to May to June. So unfortunately, we were hoping to have some of this conversation there. Having Maxine and having a blessing and a dancing fair, I think is absolutely imperative. I think in terms of further activities, though, I would argue that it's up to us to come up with the ideas. I don't want to turn to Chief Dean or the Watt Nation and say, hey, what would you like us to do on Canada Day? I think that's a bit of a passing the buck. I think what we need to do is come up as we move forward, be it for this year or for next year moving forward, come up with some thoughts and ideas and share them with the Watt Nation members to see if they're appropriate, to see if we're going down the right path, to see if they're appreciated, and they could be something we work on together. But I one of the reasons that I wasn't actually kind of disappointed that I haven't been able to meet with Dean in the meantime is because I didn't have anything to bring to the table. I didn't want to show up for coffee with Dean and say, hey, what do you want us to do for Canada Day? I wanted to say, hey, we've been thinking along this lines. And part of it is definitely we've been thinking along the lines of more recognition of, colonialism, of First Nation history, of reconciliation. So we definitely have that as a starting point, but I wanted to have something a little more specific. So all that to say, I believe it's up to us to come up with some ideas or think of some concepts that we want to share and see how appropriate they are with First Nation. Leah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I really love the direction this is all going in and a lot of the ideas. Couple things though. One is transforming it into Celebrate Pemberton. I think we should transform it into Celebrate Community, because when you use Pemberton, it's very exclusive. Our community of Pemberton also involves Lil Watt, Area C, Meadows, Birkin. That's all part of our community. And that's who all comes together on Canada Day every year to celebrate. So I think it'd be more inclusive. Also, ultimately, it is Canada Day, a celebration of country. And country basically is a collaboration of communities working together, celebrating together. So I think that wording could better include community than specifically Pemberton. I remember when we had our Darcy 4-H club, it was for everyone, but a lot of people didn't sign up just because it had Darcy in the name. So that was one thought. And you also mentioned maybe using a lot of red. I understand that partly that comes from the Canada Day flag and partly from you're saying it's one of the village colors, but I think we should also be mindful that it's a color of missing Indigenous women and children. So that's a representation it also has. So just something to be mindful of.
I'd like to see staff wearing orange personally.
If you can.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of orange t-shirts out there right now.
That's a supply chain problem.
I
know I have a couple.
Izzy Vest.
Yeah, I think all your ideas are great. I think all the integration, the Lola culture, and I think those are great ideas. And it sounds like you've got a lot of great ideas for working within the COVID constraints, the budget constraints, the time constraints. So sounds like, yeah, I support what you've said so far. I agree with Councillor Noble that the reframing is a little bit tangential. I feel like it's Canada Day and we are celebrating Canada. So I don't think we need to avoid the symbolism of the language. I think what we want to try and do is shift how we celebrate that, not just avoid language and symbols. You know what I mean? I think of it as Canada Day 2022. This is how we do it now. We have been doing a pretty good job in the past, but this is how we want to expand on that. Yeah, so I think the flag will still be front and center, and I think it's important that we don't I don't know, do this a little bit awkward sidestepping.
Yes, I can agree that all of it is awkward. And that is was very much noticed at the national conversation level as well. So, yeah.
So at this point, you kind of rattled off some cool ideas about how to spend the day, you know, starting at the lake, the run, perhaps some boating, take it over to the big green space, big field, do some picnic, some sporting or recreational type activities, whatever we can do for little kids. So I think that's a good start. And I know, like you say, a lot of the other stuff you'd be planning months ahead. So that to me sounds like a good approach to it. I still think we have a little bit of, you know, let's speak to Maxine about a blessing and a dance. And I still think we need to consider some other component in terms of how we acknowledge, you know, I like what you said. I don't think we need to sidestep or avoid Canada Day. You know, when I was reading the report, I'm like, it's still Canada Day.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. So I think it's, you know, we don't avoid it, we celebrate it differently. And well, maybe it's just as a speech, a conversation, but I feel like that we have to acknowledge that somehow differently. And again, I like all the activities you proposed. I don't really have anything else to throw at you. I'm going to keep thinking about it personally and what else we can include to just sort of pay remembrance and tribute to the impacts of colonialism, residential schools, all that, and how we pay tribute to that as part of the celebration of our country and recognition of our history. So I still think that there's something, I don't know what that is, and maybe we'll do more next year. And I like the idea of linking it up to June 21st. I think that there's a real potential there. And if we could start this process earlier next year, it would be really, really positive. But yeah, personally, I like the way you're going, the direction you're going as well. I still feel there's a little component, something else has to be said, acknowledged, whether it's through a display of learning. I think there should be some sort of learning component to it there. We always talk about reconciliation. One of the biggest part of reconciliation being awareness and learning about the past. Let's not be awkward about it. Let's be clear and transparent here. So I think there should be an educational component to it in some form that lays out the colonialist history and the history of residential schools. So it's not, we're not just doing the bear dance. We're not just doing the fun stuff. We're acknowledging the hard stuff as well. So I think we need to have something there that not just a statement of, yes, this happened, you know, here's an ability to learn, here's some links for people to follow up, here's somebody that's ready to speak. And that's something I would like to bring to LOA to say, is there anybody from the community that would like to be on hand to be able to speak to some of this and some of the history? And so to me, that's one thing I thought of, and only in the last few days. But I think there has to be a learning component, because that's the biggest component to reconciliation, is learning what happened and is happening. So I would like to see a booth of some sort. And that's something I think we would have to definitely coordinate with the Cultural Center and NOAA. Yeah, that's all I got to say. I'm rambling. Anyone else? So does that give you enough direction at this point, Christine, to move forward? I know we keep pushing this down to the wire for you.
I think so. I think what I need needed. I think I've received. Thank you, Councillor Noble, for your suggestion on Celebrate Community. It was on the table initially as well. So I agree with all of your rationale as well. I think what it comes down to is myself, one of our communication staff, and probably Vinka, figuring out how to communicate appropriately, and then just starting the process and doing all of the reaching out. We've kind of preliminary, like we've done some fishing, so to speak, already, but we can actively reach out and make some requests of people to participate and assist in those areas.
And I think from an education standpoint, you know, like I agree with Councillor Cutter's comments. Let's talk to Maxine and Leo. My comment was just more like, let's come up with something first. And I think if we said to them, we want to provide some information on the colonialist and residential history in our area.
Yeah.
Is it something you would like us to present on our own, or can we work with you because we want to present it
Yeah.
really?
I obviously love that idea. I just don't know that it's necessarily achievable for this year necessarily, but I'll try.
I mean, I feel like they were between the Squamish Willow Community Cultural
SLCC.
SLCC and the Cultural Center here in town. I feel like they have enough programming available that maybe they'd be.
Yeah, it's just a matter of finding out if they will make themselves available.
Yeah, and I will continue to reach out to the chiefs to see if there's, you know,
Yeah.
I'd be happy if council's willing to have them speak.
Yeah.
If the rest of the council's okay with that, and love to offer that opportunity. But I'll continue to do that and let you know.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, I think so. I think Celebrate Community this Canada Day is the way to go if everyone is comfortable with that.
Okay. Do you need any motions on that, or we got direction? Okay, motion received, please. Councilor Crowder, second by Councilor Zanton, opposed, motion carries. Thanks, Christine.
No, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look for a motion to adjourn committee of the whole. Councilor Crowder, second by Councilor Zanton, and opposed, motion carries.
Back into in camera.
And get to roll right in back in the camera.
Yeah.
Recording to stop. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.